ndabibona ko nta makiriro ati ndabizi ko munyica ndabibona ko nta makiriro kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana niba namwe muri ababyeyi nimundekera abana niba namwe mwarabyaye ndabinginze nimundekera abana iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze iteka rimpora ku mutima iryo jambo umubyeyi yavuze ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi ati kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana ati kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana uko bakubitaga uwo mubyeyi abana be nabo barabibonaga akana ke kabucura karamuhamagaye akana ke kari igitambambuga karamuhamagaye katari kose mama nk'ubu turaziriki nibongera kugukubita ndabarega kuri papa nibongera kugukubita ndabarega kuri papa iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze iteka rimpora ku mutima iryo jambo uwo mubyeyi yavuze ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi ati kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana ati kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana nawe se nkundira nkubaze wowe wacitse kwicumu abawe mujya gutandukana bese ubwo ujya wibuka irya nyuma mwavuganye cyagihe babirukankana musezeranaho mbese mwavuganye iki umwana wawe mujya gutandukana cyagihe hajya kugenda mwavuganye iki umufasha wawe mujya gutandukana agusezeraho we mwavuganye iki ababyeyi bawe mujya gutandukana ababyeyi bawe mwavuganye iki iryo jambo rya nyuma bakubwiye ryurizirikana kiriya ni igihango iryo jambo wawe yakubwiye cyagihe ajya kugenda jya urizirikana igihe rigufasha kumwibuka kiriya ni igihango igihe rigufasha kumwibuka kiriya ni igihango.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Rwandans from different states across the country, friends of Rwanda from other communities, thank you for accepting our invitation. And good evening to those who are following us from Rwanda or any other country. My name is Landry, and today I'm going to serve as your MC. Please allow me to welcome you on behalf of IBUKA United States and the whole organizing team to welcome you on the 27th commemoration of 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. We usually hold these type of events in person, but unfortunately, due to ongoing COVID-19 and pandemic restrictions, we can only do this online. Nevertheless, let's appreciate Zoom and other webinars and other platforms that have made this possible for us to be able to conduct these meaningful events such as today's. Today we are here to commemorate, to mourn and pay tribute to 1 million of lives of Tutsi who were killed during the genocide. Just in this short time period, 3 months, dated from April 7, 1997 to July 4th, we lost lives of 1 million. They were our siblings, they were our parents, they were our uncle and aunts, they were our friends, they were our teacher and colleagues. It is our responsibility to remember them. It is our responsibility to make sure that the world knows our history. We also use this opportunity to tell our story, to thank RPA that came to our rescue and stopped genocide. It's also time to reflect on our darkest history of our country, to learn from it and teach our younger and future generations so the history shall never repeat itself. Please, let's take a moment of silence and remember those victims. Thank you. We're going to proceed by having a song. And after that, I will have the president of IBUKA USA and give us introductory remarks.
Sinazindutse ngira ngo dusase inzobe tuvuga amashira kinyoma iki kibazo dusangiye muranafasha mpindure imyumvire ya bamwe bahakana iki gisebo bateye iki gihugu tuvuga kwibuka sinzigo tuba twimika sinzika ku mutima nibwo umuntu bukwiriye Genocide yakorewe abatutsi tuyivuge simanuka yagwiriye iki gihugu tuvukamo yarateguwe bihagije yigishwa mu mitima rwango rumaze kogera amaraso arameneka tuvuga abacu mu mazina ntihakagira idusoba tutazavaho tuzima mu muhango wo kwibuka twibuka inzirakarengane twibuka imivu y'amaraso y'abavukanyi bicwaga umuhango kwibuka uwarira yararibara utariza karibarirwa twese tugamije kubaka iyo tuvuga kwibuka sinzigo tuba twimika sinzika ku mutima nibwo umuntu bukwiriye Genocide yakorewe abatutsi tuyivuge simanuka yagwiriye iki gihugu tuvukamo yarateguwe bihagije yigishwa mu mitima rwango rumaze kogera amaraso arameneka kwibuka tuboneraho kugaya abagize uruhare mu kumena y'amaraso ni n'umwanya dushimira uwagize uwahisha akamukiza ababisha bamuhigaga nta mpuhwe tugashima bikomeye abitangiye amahoro tukongera kubaho twarabyumvaga nk'inzozi iyo tuvuga kwibuka sinzigo tuba twimika sinzika ku mutima nibwo umuntu bukwiriye Genocide yakorewe abatutsi tuyivuge simanuka yagwiriye iki gihugu tuvukamo yarateguwe bihagije yigishwa mu mitima rwango rumaze kogera amaraso arameneka abavuga kw'iribara ritateguwe barakabya baratatira igihugu baratatira amaraso twibukiranye cya gihe kugira ngo ugire icyo uvuga cyangwa se ugire icyo ukora ukavuga ubwoko ukomokamo n'urujijo rukomeye n'amarenga yacibwaga, nyamara benshi ntitwamenye iki ngoma yarihatse. Indangamuntu igaragaza ubwoko ukomokamo n'iturufu ikomeye yakoreshejwe cya gihe. N'iturufu ikomeye yakoreshejwe cya gihe n'ubuhanga buhanitse bwuzuye ubugome gusa. Iyo tuvuga kwibuka sinzigo tuba twimika, sinzika ku mutima nibwo bumuntu bukwiriye. Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi tuyivuge, si impanuka yagwiriye iki gihugu tuvukamo. Yarateguwe bihagije, yigishwa mu mitima, rwango rumaze kogera amaraso arameneka. Ngaho nimucyo twigire ku mateka yahashize, ayo mateka dusangiye atubera umwarimu ukomeye. Ngaho nimucyo twigire ku mateka yahashize, ayo mateka dusangiye atubera umwarimu ukomeye. Ayo mateka dusangiye atubera umwarimu ukomeye. Ayo mateka dusangiye atubera umwarimu ukomeye. Ayo mateka dusangiye atubera umwarimu ukomeye.
Hello?
Hello.
I think right now we can give time to Jason Chini for his remarks.
Okay, thank you. Your Excellency Mathilde Mukantabana, Ambassador of Rwanda to the United States, Senator Antoine Mugesera, Egide, Nkuranga, the President of IBUKA in Rwanda, Dr. Antoine Rutayisire, Dr. Beth, Dr. Stephen Smith, Emmanuel Karirima, distinguished guests, members of IBUKA USA, attendees, and friends, welcome. 27 years ago, the unspeakable happened when genocide against Tutsis happening in Rwanda. But first of all, allow me to introduce you to IBUKA USA and give a small brief information about it. This organization was founded in Belgium back in August 1994 when Rwandan who lived there created IBUKA Belgium. Responding to this call on May 28 in 1995, the Rwandan who live in Switzerland, they created IBUKA Switzerland. Along the same line, in November in 1995, the genocide survivors in Rwanda. They created IBUKA in Rwanda. And April 2002, IBUKA France was created as well. This is a long list. I can go on and on. But what I'm trying to say is IBUKA USA was launched on December 19th, 2020, last year. So it's a new organization. The purpose and the aim of IBUKA USA Association is to honor the memory of the victim of the genocide against Tutsis, to restore their dignity, to assist and advocate for survivors of genocide against Tutsis. Also, we developed and implement socioeconomic and cultural projects that foster well-being and social development of survivors, and to initiate and support any effort to bring these perpetrators or the killers to the justice. So IBUKA USA Association tended to defend the same principles and the values as IBUKA-Rwanda Association, and it is in section in other countries such as Italy, Norway, Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, as I spoke before. We are here today to remember innocent men, women, and kids who were murdered because how God made them and just how they will look like. Being tall and having a long nose should not be a sin to be killed. The genocidaire, or the people who take the life of our families, they didn't do it just in one day. It was a strategic and skilled propaganda that started way before. Information management was built into the system and it was planned. We are talking about those 10 stages of genocide. We know that since the 1950s, people were divided into two groups, the victim and also they called to Hutus who will consider themselves as superior, and today we know what they did. Tutsis were facing systematic discrimination. They were dehumanized by being called as animals, as snake, for example. The Hutu government that time, they created a specific group which include military, civilians, and the gendarme, which we can compare to police today's, to enforce the genocide ideology. The same government, they did the propaganda on the radio. We're talking about LTRM and the national radio. They prepared the list of Tutsis to be murdered. And they did it in 1994 as well. But we're talking about people have been killed since the 1950s, 59, 60s. And today we remember all of them. They were tortured. They didn't do nothing wrong. Their life was taken away by long policies and its leadership. We should say never again to this piracy and genocide ideology and genocide denial. From the bottom of our heart, I want to take this moment to thank RPF that sacrificed themselves to rescue us and stop the genocide. So on behalf of survivors of genocide against Tutsis and the USA, in IBUKA USA, we want to take this moment to thank RPF and President Kagame for sacrificing their lives for us to be here today. Because without them, we were going to be dead. And we, the survivors, we promise you to be your right hand, to help in building the country that is peaceful and give justice to all, not just one group of people. Why did I try to spend more time on talking about 10 stages of genocide? I did it because I wanted to show people how we are in the last stage of genocide, which is genocide in there. We see many information going around denying that genocide against Tutsis did not happen. People like Jury Liver, Krotigatebuke, and the more promoted this genocide ideology. They use their time and their platform to poison the world. There is a jumbo group which is made of kids born from parents who were convicted of the crime of genocide by Rwanda justice system or international justice, while some of their parents are still hiding. All this work together to bring this genocide ideology back to life again, and we should not allow it. Allow me to talk about justice. With the survivors of genocide against Tutsis, we see suspects in many countries, including where we live, around the world. However, we are not happy how the justice is happening. It hurts to see a criminal next to your door, and when you report it, they tell you, sorry, it may be slow, but you are still working on it. Then 5 years later, they arrest one among 1,000 suspects who are still freely passing in front of your house, and you can't do nothing about it because the justice is just too slow. Arresting one suspect in 5 years is like taking one leaf from the tree. It's not enough, and I think nobody's happy to see that kind of process, and it hurts to the survivors and to the world. So we have to change if we want a good future. However, doing what those agencies and countries are doing is going to be a part of history. And the future is going to judge. Our kids, our grandkids is going to judge and write and look back and see what we did when we were in those positions. We have witnesses, we have powerful stories, we have evidences, and there is no reason that it may take months and years to arrest a suspect when evidences are available. Let me finish by thanking everybody who support us, who support our cause. We have many friends. Some are here today, some are not. But we thank you so much for your support and helping the 1994 genocide survivors, because our hearing will be long, but without you, it's hard to heal. So thank you, and let's continue to remember, renew, and unite. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasol, for your powerful message. And right now, we're going to do lightning candles, and this action is going to be led by Rome. Father Rome, please, it's your time.
Thank you, Landry. When I was 10 years old, my grandmother died. She's the only grandparent I met, and she was a matriarch for a big family. When her death was announced, neighbors came to pay tribute and offer their condolences. That evening, a big fire was lit and kept burning every evening, even after her burial. People gathered together around the fire and reflected on her life and their lives in general, and the meaning of her legacy, etc. In the midst of sorrow, gathering around that fire was bringing joy and comfort to our family and to all who were losing and missing her. That fire was and still is one of the rich aspects of our culture around the loss, because it is meant to enable the ritual of remembrance to the perpetuated memory, and the warmth of that fire lit each evening meant to ease the pain of loss. Keeping Igishito in Rwanda, a big fire burning in remembrance of lost loved ones, signifies that the memory still lives on and burns bright. It is a ritual that promotes reflection and signifies remembrance. In a place of a big fire, different cultures lit candles, but the meaning is quite the same. Candles have long been used within many cultures as a symbolic way to remember those past. In Judaism, for example, during the observing of Yahrzeit, on the evening of death anniversary, there is a lighting of a symbolic candle. The family members get together and reflect on the memory of the deceased or share memories, and this takes place yearly for the rest of the surviving family members. During that evening, it is appropriate to give tzedakah, a charitable giving in memory of the deceased, to support the surviving members of the family. And tzedakah is more than just ritual token. It is a way of saying that in addition to remembering, in addition to praying, we actively pursue acts of goodness and justice in memory of our loved ones, that making the world a better place with them in mind. Something we can think of during our yearly Kwibuka. The candles we lit today are for us a great way to celebrate the lives of loved ones that we lost during the genocide against the Tutsi 27 years ago. With these candles, we are celebrating the lives of loved ones, but we are also to reflect on our own memories. What does surviving mean to us? What lessons have we learned? What is our purpose in life after the genocide against the Tutsi? And what legacy should we hold dear to keep our loved ones alive? We will lit these candles in memory of many people that we represent here, and we are going to do it in categories. And I'm calling those who are going to represent each category to be ready. So for the children, may I please call Liam Ganji and Lisa Sheja to light a candle in memory of all the children we've lost.
We remember all those innocent children killed, those of our age, the unborns whose lives were cut short. I remember you begging the killers, please do not kill me, and I promise I won't be Tutsi anymore. I remember how you were brutally taken out of the arms of your own parents, thrown into the rivers, smashed on the walls. You were the hope for a better future to your parents and to your country. Your dreams died with you, but still, we celebrated your short lives. We remember you and say never again to genocide. I am lighting this candle in memory of those children.
Thank you, Lisa and Liam. For young adults, men commonly known in Kinyarwanda as Abasore, may I invite Patrick Karege to come and light a candle in their memory, please.
We light this candle in memory of the young men and the young adults who died before fulfilling their dreams. It represents the light of their being, their special talents, needs, visions, gifts, their valor, and all made them who they were. Dear brothers, we light this candle with gratitude, and we honor your memory and your honor. As we blend, we light of this candle, we're celebrating your power when we are fighting to survive. And some of us, we survive because of your brave sacrifice. We remember your passion, commitment, and we salute you. May the fire of this light symbolize your energy rising and reach straight to the heaven. May the one you left behind, may your country Rwanda, and wherever we honor you by committing the truth, light, happiness, honesty, joy, purpose, and peace.
May I also invite Console Nishimwe to light a candle in memory of young adult women known as Inkumi in Kinyarwanda. Please, Console.
Young girls, Inkumi. Throughout history, many different societies have used the candle lighting to celebrate and acknowledge special life events and holidays. For us, the light of these candles represents the foundation of love that has been the heart of a Rwandan young woman, IBUKA-Rwanda. Its brightness reminds us of their beauty. The heat and fragility of this burning candle remind us of the hate and death that took our sisters away from us. Dear sisters, this candle we light for you will remain burning and brightening our hearts as a sign of our commitment to remain united to you in your lives, your hopes, and your dreams. Your beauty, your loves, your smiles, your kindness and courage were a light in our paths. May this candle we light in your memory be a sign of our unbreakable promise to keep you alive in our memories and to brighten the future of our country as you brightened it in your time.
The next category is for women, Abagore. May I invite Alice Karekezi to light a candle for the ladies, please.
Women, Abagore. In many cultures, fire symbolizes both purity and passion. Its flame means the security and warmth of home and family. Dear Babjeyi, women of Rwanda, you have been a light in your household. As you committed to see the light in household, nurtured that flame in your families, and tended to the passion, security, and warmth to everyone each day, especially at the time it may be hardest to see. And the hard times in the history of our country, when you worked hard to keep everyone safe, comforted, and loved. We light this candle for you to recognize and salute an even greater flame of your memory in our hearts. We remember that the light of your heart was an expression of light that came from your love, gentleness, kindness, and smile. That light that brightened your homes from your hearts will continue to be sustained and renewed by our commitment to keep you alive forever in our memory. The candle we lit for you today symbolizes our gratitude for your lives as wives and mothers, your strength, your hard work, and keeping your house clean, and yourselves for the sake of your families. Mothers, as long as we live, you live, and we will forever remember in our hearts. I light this candle in memory of mothers and women who were killed during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
Thank you, Alice. May I also invite Dieudonne Ndaisaba to light a candle in memory of all the gentlemen we lost during the genocide of Abagabo.
Many Abagabo. The flame of candle represents illumination and spirit of fire. It symbolizes inspiration, power, and passion. It is also associated with the security of home and family as warm and hard igicaniro. Bagabo of Rwanda, you each brought these qualities forth from within yourselves to your families and your country. We light this candle to acknowledge your bravery. May flame of this candle continue to burn always brightly in our heart as we remember who you were, what you did for us to be where we are. The dancing flame of this candle symbolizing the strength, vitality, and bravery in your fatherhood and manhood. Continue to inspire young men to pick up from where you left and be Bagabo in your steps. We light this candle to tell you, brave Bagabo of Rwanda, that your courage and what you fought for continue to grow, will enrich and sustain us through the years ahead. Salute and honor to you now and forever in your memories. So now we're gonna light the candle for many Abagabo.
And this is the message for all the elderly men, Abasaza, our grandfathers who lost during the genocide. We light the next candle to remember the elderly men who fell victim of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. We light it as a sign of gratitude and thanksgiving for all the sacrifices they offered for us in so many years since the 50s, when they started suffering for being Tutsi, trying all their best to shield us against bigotry, that their sacrifices were not in vain. Through their wisdom and wit, we grew up in a loving environment and we are strong. Thank you. We light this candle to show you that the flame of love you held high for us couldn't be extinguished by hate, that it is burning brightly beyond your villages and towns, across the oceans. You will live forever because we live. We survived to chant your bravely and to keep your memory alive. Nagira ngo mpamagare Dani Mbabariye abacanire urumuri rwo kubibuka. Please Dani Mbabariye. Mbabariye yaba ari hafi ngo aducanire itara. Ducanire buji yo kwibuka abasaza.
Abikoze.
Yitwereke.
Ziriba muri kumbara sinzijaba.
Noneho turakubona urakoze. The next category is for the elderly women of Abakecuru, and this is their message, the message for them. Dear mothers and grandmothers, you gave us life. Because of you, we lived, loved, and happy. We light this candle in memory of gratitude for your lives. We light it as a sign of gratitude and thanksgiving May the flame of this candle reach where you are to echo our songs as we record the lullabies and advices you always repeated in our ears. Your loved lives forever, your loved ones live forever in our hearts, and your lives are forever in our hearts. And so will be your memory. You are the stars brightening our skies. May you continue to inspire us to be better, stronger, and may you always feel our love and gratitude in our hearts. Because we live, you live, and you will be forever in the memory of our hearts. Nagira ngo nsabe umubyeyi Immaculée Dushimiyimana aducanire buji yo kubiri. Please, Immaculée. Bakoze mubyeyi Immaculata. The next category is for some non-Rwandans who were in Rwanda. Some were for their work, others were to protect everybody, fell victims of the genocide. As an example, I can give you the name of Antonia Locatelli, who died in Mugesera when they were testing the genocide in 1993, or a Ghanaian who were peacekeeper, who refused to leave Tutsis alone like so many did. There were so many who, because of the bravely didn't shed their lives, their blood for us. We want to give a voice to all those and remember their sacrifice. May I invite Miss Alexandra Hadinger to light a candle for them, please, Madam. Alexandra.
If darkness is ignorance, then the light of a candle is a tribute to knowledge and truth, and many candles together banish the darkness. As we light candles in memory of the genocide against the Tutsi of Rwanda in 1994, people like me learn, and people like my husband remember those whom he lost, those who were killed. Together we continue to look at the uncomfortable truth that people can be motivated by fear and hatred to do unspeakable things, and that others can turn a blind eye and refuse help in an unimaginably cruel way. The light of the candles diminishes those shadows, the distorted realities and half-truths that are told to lessen the violence of the genocide or to diminish Rwanda's recovery. The candles are lit for mothers and fathers, babies, grandparents, and children whose lives were taken. My will is that a clear and bright light will always be shed when we light the candles together in their memories, to banish the shadows and darkness and to never forget.
Thank you, Alexandra. This next category is a candle in memory of those who died after July 4th, 1994, but died as a victim of the genocide against Tutsi. It was after the genocide was started, many of us were safe, but they died as victims of that genocide. Some of them were, for example, we heard of survivors who were killed in the villages because they were testifying. We know many who died because of the wounds, physical and emotional, that they got as a result of the weapons used during the genocide. We cannot forget them. We are going to light a candle to tell them that we thank them for who they are, and we will forever remember them. This is a candle in their memory.
Thank you very much, Father Rome. The next category, we're going to remember exterminated families. We do remember families who were completely wiped off during the genocide. We remember families who none was left to tell their story. We gather around this candle to remember them, to tell the world their story, to tell the world that their story will forever be told, and their memories will always be carried in our hearts. We know who they were, and we remember their name. They were our brothers, sisters, neighbors, and our fellow Tutsis. We know what they liked. They liked peace for their families, security for their country, harmony in their offsprings. We know their courage, their bravery, their love of hard working. We light this candle to remember them and promise them that hate and killing did not have the last word. The last word was written in them by eternal God who created them. In him they will live, and in our memories they will live forever. I'm going to read, the list is long, but I'm going to read only a few names representing those families that were perished. I remember Ntazinda Kajamaile and his family, Kamal Oziel, Sebahutu and his wife and his whole family, Kabela Savel, Rugilza Gatembel, Dushaband Havugimana, Chubahiro Kabela, Kibumba and his wife and his 5 children, Sam Hundu and his wife, Nyirakibai and his 4 children. We remember Kanyenzi Jonas, his wife, Mukababuta Rachel, and their 5 children. We remember Gunguru Genje Thomas and his wife. We remember Bisao Stefan and his whole family. We remember Luigisha Leonidas, his wife, and their 7 children. We remember Sebi Koko Bunyoni and his wife and all his kids. I would like to have Ernest to read the next 14 names. Ernest Rugwizangoga.
Remember Bizimana Ilaza, his whole family. Remember Renzaho Dagijimana and his whole family. Remember Gafev with his whole family. Remember Sebigega and his whole family. Remember Guasamawiye and his whole family. Remember Nyabakwe and the whole family. Remember Usa Nukuri and his whole family. Remember Yushabure and his whole family. Remember Nakebuka and his whole family. Remember Kanyoni and his whole family.
Thank you, Ernest. Like I said, this list is very long, but we have chosen only 27 of them, representing 27 years passed after genocide. Then we ask the technician to put in a song for us, and then we'll hear a testimony from Emmanuel. Please start getting ready. It's time for the song. Thank you.
I am who I am because I value my past. The memories of yesterday can never be changed, but they give me a reason to live again. There is a reason I am here today, but there is no reason you lost your lives. You were called abusive names, deprived of rights to be humans, slayed because of who you were born. I am lighting a candle as the sign of resilience. I'm paying a tribute. You left a legacy, and I'm a fruit from the love you sowed. Let's say never again to genocide. There should be no war. There should be no genocide. Anyway, let's say never again to genocide. Let's say never again to genocide. I was young, I still needed you, but you were taken away from me too soon. If I had one wish, be seeing you again. Today we're strong men and women, even though you are not here to see. We're carrying on to make you feel proud out there, watching down at us. I am lighting a candle as the sign of resilience. I'm paying a tribute. You left a legacy, and I'm a fruit from the love you sowed. Let's say never again to genocide. There should be no war. There should be no genocide. Anyway, let's say never again to genocide. Let's say never again to genocide. I am a witness that if you and I come together as one, we can make sure genocide never happens again. History should be told and passed on to further generations. Let's all stand up and all sing out, never again to genocide. Let's say never again to genocide. There should be no war. There should be no genocide. Anyway, let's say never again to genocide. Never again, never again. To genocide. Never again, never again, never again. We brought you flowers. 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 We brought you flowers.
I hope you all enjoyed the song. Just a little bit of change. We're going to hear from Dr. Stephen D. Smith, and then we'll hear the testimony from Emmanuel right after. If the Dr. Stephen D. Smith is ready, please, it's your time.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Stephen Smith, part of the USC Shoah Foundation, the archive that was collected originally by Steven Spielberg, the filmmaker, to collect testimonies of the witnesses to the Holocaust. That program began collecting testimonies in April of 1994. In fact, the very first testimonies of the survivors of the Holocaust were being collected in the second week of April. At that time, we didn't know or didn't understand what was happening in Rwanda. We just knew that there was a need to take testimony of the Holocaust, which had waited for 50 years. And it was an urgent task because the survivors were getting old. And while they were telling their testimonies, your families were being murdered and you were surviving just by the thinnest of margins. And now it's time to tell your testimony too. Today in the Shoah Foundation's archive, there are about 160 testimonies of survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi, 1994. That number is growing every year. And we partner with both the Aegis Trust, Kigali Genocide Memorial, and IBUKA in Rwanda to ensure that those voices are heard outside of Rwanda and in the world. Testimony is not just the telling of the history of the past. As those of you who have given testimony know, it's a giving of yourself. I had interviewed many survivors of the Holocaust when I went to Rwanda in 2001. I was part of the Aegis Trust and was developing and helping to build the Kigali Genocide Memorial. And so I got to speak to many survivors every single day for several years. You know, during my time taking testimonies of the Holocaust survivors, usually they were 25 to 30 years older than me. They had seen the atrocities of the Second World War and the Nazis. And they were my seniors. They were wise guides to the past. And then during the 1994, like many, I had been a bystander to the genocide against the Tutsi. I had watched from a distance. I was very busy trying to tell the story of what had happened to the Jews during the Holocaust, so busy doing that I wasn't ready to respond to or know how to respond to the genocide against the Tutsi. And so when I was in Rwanda in 2001 to 2004, working on the Kigali Genocide Memorial, now I was a bystander who was working with survivors who were 15 years younger than me. I'll never forget the day I was sitting in the office at Aegis when Yves Cameronsi came in. He was one of the first people to work for the Kigali Genocide Memorial before it was built. And he was sitting in the room next to me. He had a very nice degree from KIST in computer science, and I needed a computer. I need someone to operate computers. So I hired this graduate, and we were testing our technology, and we wanted to be able to mark the graves, the mass graves around Rwanda using satellite technology. And I said, we just need a site, Yves, to test. He said, oh, I know the place. And so we got in the Jeep and we drove out of Kigali into past Kicukiro and turned left. It was a very nice street with beautiful houses and gardens. And we got to the very last house and we stopped and we got out of the Jeep. And Yves went to the gate. There was a wall with a gate, and he went to the gate and he unlocked the gate and walked through. I said, where are we? He said, oh, this is my home. We walked into the garden with his satellite receiver, and he stood in the middle of the lawn and said, here. And I said, what's here? He said, there's a grave here. My mother, my father, my sister, and the lady from across the street. They're buried here. The house was beautiful. There was a veranda and there was roses, and I went into the house with him, and the kitchen was just like his mother had left it in 1994. The next day, I went back with Yves to the same house, and we sat on that veranda, and he gave his testimony for the first time. He told me his story. And now I was hearing testimony from a completely different perspective to that which I'd heard before, because unlike the testimonies that were taken long ago, the pain was very real and fresh. The wounds were fresh. But also we were sitting in the very house where his family had been murdered. We were sitting on the very veranda where his father would sit and drink a beer with the neighbor after work, the same neighbor that killed his sister. And so testimony became about person and place and trauma and the need to heal. Today, Yves is still involved in ensuring that the testimony of other survivors are told and preserved and shared, and the documentation of the genocide against the Tutsi is kept in perpetuity, because what we understood that day when we talked to each other and he told me his testimony was that it wasn't just about now, it was about how we tell this story for all time. I was aware while working on the Kigali Genocide Memorial that testimony in Rwanda was very different from anything I'd experienced. In April of 2002, I went to Nyanza, Kicukiro, to the site of the killing at Nyanza. There was no memorial there then, there was no buildings, there was no IBUKA, there was just a field with crosses in it and about 2,000 people that had gathered. There was one little light bulb. You know, we've all spent time in Rwanda, one little light bulb and one generator, and the generator kept stopping and we were all in darkness in the middle of the night. I was talking to a young lady who was a student in one of the, I forget which university now. She was standing next to me. And we were talking about her studies while we were waiting for testimony to begin. And then testimony began in the middle of the night. And then that young lady was very traumatized by what she heard and fell at my feet and was screaming, and eventually was taken by one of the amazing paramedics that were there to look after those who were traumatized. And I watched her leaving in the ambulance, and I realized that this young woman had a whole life ahead of her and to carry that pain. And that testimony was not about the words, it was about what she heard in the story and what she didn't know about that place, because she survived it, but didn't know everything about it until she heard somebody else talking about something that struck her. And so testimony is about the soul. It's about who we are as people. It's about healing. but it also is about giving. I want to thank those of you on this call who have given testimony to either the Aegis Trust or IBUKA or the Shoah Foundation, because it allows people like myself to learn. Not learning the facts. I've read enough books. I know the facts. I wrote the museum text at Kigali Genocide Memorial. I lived in that genocide, the facts of the genocide for a very long time. But every time I hear you speak, every time I hear your souls, every time I hear the outpouring of your loss, but also the hope that you have for your own family and your own country and all of the other survivors, that that we will be able to find a future together, inspires me. And so thank you to all of you who have had the courage to tell. For those of you who have not, that's not a necessity. Never is it a necessity to tell your deepest secrets to anybody. Some of those may stay with you for the rest of your life. At the Shoah Foundation today, we just recently interviewed a 100-year-old who just found the courage to tell her story 2 weeks ago at the age of 100. Sometimes testimony takes time. But for those of you who have, and those of you who do share, I want to thank you for your courage and for being my teacher and for being our guides. This is not a guide. To be the guides to hell is no matter that anybody would ever want to have, but you have been that for us in our world. And for the books you've written and the films you've made and the talks that you have given and allowing us into your pain and allowing us to learn from you, I want to say a heartfelt thank you. And finally, I just want to say that the very word Kwibuka, to remember, is not just about remembering those who we have lost, although of course that is what today and these 100 days is all about. But it's also to be a constant reminder to us and to the world that we must not take lightly our duties to prevent genocide, that we must engage in the world around us, that we must be the lights in this dark world. And for those of you who are here today who are remembering together, we are that light, you are that light to the world. That is that fire that we started hearing about at the very beginning that burns brightly. And in a way, 27 years later, we're still sitting around that fire, remembering the names, remembering the loved ones, but also lighting up the darkness of our skies. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, for your work you're doing for Rwandan survivors, both home and here in the state of America. Now let's welcome Emmanuel. He's a Tutsi survivor of genocide, and now he lives in Oregon, United States of America. It's your time, Emmanuel.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you all for showing up for us, and really appreciate your contribution. As moderator say, my name is Emmanuel Turaturanye. I'm just gonna talk about my experience, like for what happened, but it's just to try to make it shorter because it's really long. It can take hours and hours, but I come up with a summarized script that can really summarize in short so that people can understand for what happened. So it's 11 in the morning, and just time to make our family lunch, cooking outside on fire. I was 16 by that time, and my little sister, who was not quite 3 yet, was just beside me, and I would cook some food, just give her a little bit to taste, and I was her favorite big brother. So as I was cooking, making the meal, lunch, I began to hear marching and singing in distance. And then all of a sudden I saw a crowd coming towards us, people carrying machetes, clubs, guns. Some I even knew in my church, the others I didn't know. When they started running toward us, I scooped my little sister and then we ran. I was Sunday school preacher's son. My father was a minister in the Anglican church. So, but I'm a Tutsi, but growing up, it was really hard for me to know who I was. Till when I joined primary school, elementary school, when I got slapped in the face when I stood up among the Hutu people. And that day, I remember it's like happened yesterday. My mother and the last born Ruth, they were inside doing the chores inside the house. Unfortunately, we couldn't really go back inside the house. So they were found inside the house. They were killed right there. And then my father was visiting some neighbors who were sick and praying over them. So they called him while he was walking home, and he was killed on that day on the 8th. So my brother was just keeping the goats and cows in the pasture. He was found and he was killed there too as well. My grandma, who was the house next to us, she was also found. And then she was killed. And we had also 3 cousins from my uncle. But in Rwandan culture, we call them brothers and sisters. I know in the Western context, they're called cousins. But let me use the word brothers and sisters. So they were raised in our family. All of them were killed. So I think it was on 10th, our old brother was trying to free the country. Then he couldn't make it, so he was caught. He was also killed while he was trying to cross the border of Rwanda and Tanzania. So only, we were 11 people in our household, only 3 of us have survived. My sister and my younger brother, only 3 of us. When the killer attacked us, I acted just in survival instinct with my little sister in arms. I ran later in the night before the other crowd, which was just also running and hiding in the bushes in the forest. Till the next day, we reached a district office, hoping the government will protect us and give us safety. So we waited on Komine Birenga. To those who know really well Eastern Province, there is a Komine Birenga. So we went there, lived there we were there for 3 days, no food, no water, nothing. And then on the fourth day was also same time while I was cooking food, it was 11 o'clock. And then the government brought this big truck full with the rice and beans, and because they knew we were hungry. So before we could even eat, we were surrounded with Interahamwe and the government's troops who started shooting and start throwing a grenade into the crowd gathered around where we were cooking. So when I realized what was happening, I just shouted to my sister to run. Luckily for us, the place where we were, there was no fence, but those who were in the fenced area, it was no escape. So they all were found and killed inside. So my sister went one way and went another way. And then later in the night, while we were wandering bushes, I was really happy to see her again. So spent the whole night trying to figure out what we're gonna do, but we really didn't have any idea for what we were supposed to do. And I remember that my dad had a lot of friends. He had a Muslim lady who was not far from where the district office where we were attacked. So I went to her, but I didn't really know what to expect. She was kind of like best friend, really best friend with my dad, but I didn't know how it would happen because that in those days, it was really even hard to know who is your friend, who is not. So friends turn against their friends and then become enemies. So I showed up to her house with my little sister, and she was really shocked to see us. The first thing she did, she fed us. And then she told us, as long as I live, I will protect you and make sure you guys are safe. Now you're my children. Your parents, I know they were killed, but now you're now my children. So she took us in. Still, it wasn't that easy to hide. Once the killer would come, we hide under the bed, under the mattress, somewhere where it's really hard to get caught, but she really protected us. I think was, I can't really remember the days in those times, but I remember one was probably maybe after 1 week or so, that's when RPF captured the whole Kibungo area. So they chased away those Interahamwe and government troops, and they took us into safety. And after that, life became really hard as a genocide survivor. It was really, we had nothing really remaining. But to cut my story short, I don't want to really go into details, but from when the RPF really rescued us, it was like a miracle. I can't really explain how grateful I am for the RPF to stop the genocide. So after that, the building, rehabilitation, always take a long time. I managed to go back to school, even though it was really hard. I was, homeless, helpless. And, but still, I was really, really traumatized. I can't even I can't even explain how traumatized I was. And, when you have trauma, I don't want to call it mental illness or mental disorder in Western context, but when you have that kind of trauma inside, you always want something to cover it so that you can numb it, so that you won't feel anything. So I started using different drugs, started smoking. I never seen my dad smoking. I started abusing alcohol. I just wanted to end my life because I thought life has no meaning, and I didn't really know what to expect in next month or in a year, because I was having the same fear. Maybe these criminals will come back and continue killing us again. So I had to seek help because I reached that time where I wanted even to take my own life, because life misery, life I was living in. But I don't know if it is comfortable to talk about God or Jesus, but this is how I really got I can't say like 100% recovered, but I would say really the church really helped me a lot. So I went, I really hated God even those times because I was a preacher's kid, I was a pastor's kid, and I really went away from God. And all of a sudden, I remember one day I was pretty high. I was smoking marijuana. To those who know Sherando, towards the Shushu, I was smoking, and I was in a fight with the police. I just wanted to end my life, but it didn't happen. And then the next day, I did the same thing till I heard a voice which was sounding like my father, which I didn't even know where it was, calling my name, asking me what I was doing. And then when I heard the voice, which was asking Emmanuel, what you're doing, imagine your father is now in heaven. Do you know how proud he was? Do you think, is he proud right now? Or he's upset about you? That was really, for me, a turning point. So I joined, I had to change a group I was hanging out with. So I joined, that's when I accepted Jesus Christ as my savior. I found a new family that it helped me to heal. And I can tell you, it was really life transforming for me because I was almost about to take my own life. And also I seek different help. I went through therapy sessions, and I felt much better. So I managed to go to school. I managed to graduate in college. My sister graduated from college, and they were really grateful for the support for the government that really helped us all to be able to have equal rights to go to school. And I think that's what I would say. And also, another thing that I had to go through as a church, as someone who was working in a church, also singing, still in my heart, I would say, I would preach, but I will never be in relationship with the Hutus. So that's when Christ really started changing my life. How can I live authentic Christian life without being a hypocrite? So I started just allowing God to work in my heart, and also opening my heart to others, and even to those who are my family. And I'm really grateful. Even when I got married, guess who showed up? Those people who destroyed our homes. They came, they say, hey, we did this. You don't have anyone else to show up to your wedding. We're coming to show up. They showed up. And I'm really grateful for the transformation that God really did in my heart. And also the transformation, the progress that God is really doing in our country. And thank you all. I can talk and talk and talk, but that's in short summary what I really went through. And I'm still healing, and it's really hard, especially at this time, but I'm very hopeful. And let all of us stand up and say never again, never again. And anything that did have all those red flags that did promote those propagandas and ideologies, all of us fight against that. And you have to be the voice for the voiceless. Thank you all, and thank you for listening. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you very much, Brother Emmanuel. I know for sure it's not easy to share our past, Those are memories that most of us don't want to think about. We force ourselves to forget them. To see someone who's willing to share the history with us, it's very encouraging. And I also appreciate the way you are open about mental health struggle. That's something that we share with a lot of us, but we believe together we can heal. So we're going to hear one more song, and after that, I will introduce our next speaker. During this time, we're going to hear the song. I will encourage everybody to grab a drink of your choice and try to move around, because our program will take a few more hours. Thank you very much. It's time for the song.
Don't touch these things. Ow! Mama, don't miss her.
Alex, if you are there, it's time for the song. Alex, are you there?
Hello, please, sorry for technical issues. If you can continue, I'll bring the song later. Okay.
cyarushenye cyarutse u Rwanda rwacu ruteze amaboko uturugarure rurashoka hafa tuhige neza kandi Imana ifasha abatwaza turabakundaga turababura ikibi cyanyu tuzacyusa bana Rwanda tuzahora iteka tubibuka niba tuyobowe n'urukundo imfubyi zareka kwigunga abamugaye n'abapfakazi basekeye abasizwe iheruheru bamenwe amaganya yimuke twizere niba tuyobowe n'ubutwari umunyabyaha azareke guhaba atanga ikintu iruhuko ukuri kuzabura imitima u Rwanda rwongere guhera turabakundaga turababura ikibi cyanyu tuzacyusa bana Rwanda tuzahora iteka tubibuka bana Rwanda tuzahora iteka akazi basekeye abasizwe iheruheru bamenwe amaganya yimuke twizere niba tuyobowe n'ubutwari umunyabyaha azareke guhaba atanga ikintu iruhuko ukuri kuzabura imitima u Rwanda rwongere guhera turabakundaga turababura ikibi cyanyu tuzacyusa bana Rwanda tuzahora iteka tubibuka bana Rwanda tuzahora iteka tubibuka bana Rwanda tuzahora iteka tubibuka bana Rwanda tuzahora iteka.
Thank you. Now we can be back, and I hope you enjoy the song. Right now, one second. All right, now we are back. Like I was saying, it's time to listen to Senate Mugesera, Antoine. He's a former IBUKA-Rwanda president, and he has worked hand in hand with Rwandan and Tutsi genocide survivors, and he has a lot to share, and I believe we can learn a lot from him. Please, it's your time, Senate Antoine. Senator Antoine Mugesera, are you with us right now? Let's give you a few more minutes. Like you all know, sometimes technology can present with some difficulties, but we're slowly getting there. He's not responding, maybe while we're still waiting for him.
Sorry, he has a problem of his machine, but he's saying he's trying to get in again. So you can just put someone else and then.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, brother Egide. I'm glad you are with us today again. And if you are ready, actually, you can go first, and then we will have Senator Antoine right after.
Thank you very much for this time you are giving me. I'm sorry. I think the big part of my intervention will be in here, Rwanda. So I request you to write some points that so that you can summarize what I'm saying. It's better to express myself in my language because of this time is not simple, hard. So emotions are well expressed in your mother tongue. So you understand me. Okay. Good. So mumbabarire ngiye gutangira my message reading a quote done by our brother who passed away. No umuntu twese tuzi. Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Navugaga ko ngiye gutangiza ijambo amagambo twasigiwe n'umubyeyi wacu umukuru wacu witwaga Dr. Nason muri uyu muhango wo kwibuka. Biri mu magambo y'Igifaransa ariko ndagerageza kuyashyira mu Kinyarwanda. Maybe Landry, you can take note of that and then you can translate later. Yaravuze ngo il n'y a pas d'outil pour mesurer la souffrance des rescapés. Pour les comprendre, il faut s'entraîner à les écouter patiemment et essayer de décoder le langage de leur souffrance. Ni ikintu gikomeye reka ngerageze kubivuga mu Kinyarwanda. Navuze ngo nta bikoresho nta buryo bwo kushobora kugereranya ububabare bw'abacitse ku icumu kugira ngo bumve. Ugomba kuba ufite niba navuga training cyangwa se warateguwe neza kugira ngo ushobore kumva neza, ushobore kugerageza kumva ururimi rwabo rugaragaza ububabare bwabo. Ni ikintu gikomeye cyane. Nzagerageza kugishyira mu Cyongereza kugira ngo kuko ngira ngo nicyo merewe kubera yuko tumaze kumva ubuhamya bwa Emmanuel. Mbonera n'umwanya kugira ngo mukomeze yihangane kandi nta nubwo ari we wenyine, ariko kubera ko duhaye ubuhamya yihangane, akomeze arwane no kugira ngo abeho nk'uko yabishoboye kugeza ubu. Ndagira ngo rero nihanganishe mwebwe mwese, cyane cyane nihanganishe abacitse ku icumu bose, nanabakomeze abacitse ku icumu ya Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, nanabakomeze muri ibi bihe, muri iyi minsi 100 twese tuba twasubiye muri bya bihe. Ngira ngo mwabonye emotions Emmanuel arimo kuduha ubuhamya kuko yabivugaga, ni summary yaduhaye kubera yuko yari afite byinshi byo kutubwira. Ndagira ngo ariko nanashimire cyane mu izina rya IBUKA yo mu Rwanda n'imiryango yose yibumbiye muri IBUKA. Nshimire IBUKA yo muri Amerika kuri iki gikorwa mwateguye cyo kwibuka. Ngira ngo ni cyo gikorwa cya mbere mukoze kuva umuryango wa IBUKA US watangira nka IBUKA, ariko hari indi miryango ihagarara inyungu cyangwa se y'abacitse ku icumu muri Amerika yajyaga bikora. None ubu ngubu byakozwe na IBUKA. Iyo coordination mwakoze rwose, ngira ngo murabona ukuntu ari igikorwa cyiza kandi namwe ubwanyu mwishimira. Mwagize challenges nyinshi birumvikana kubera igihugu cyanyu ukuntu kingana, igihugu kinini, it's like a continent. So ariko bigaragara yuko mwashyizemo ingufu kugira ngo izo challenges mushobore kugerageza kurwana nazo, kandi mwarabishoboye. Nibyo kubashimira. Mwagenze urugendo rurerure kugira ngo mugere aho muri. Ikintu kindi ngira ngo nshimire ni ngira ngo nshime ibikorwa nk'abacitse ku icumu muri Amerika. Noneho ubu ngubu navuga ko ari yumbiye muri IBUKA yo muri Amerika. Ni ibikorwa mudahwema gukora, dufatanya. Ngira ngo nanabibabwire, umwaka ushize covid itangira, twagize ibibazo by'abavandimwe bacu, cyane cyane abatuye mu mijyi babaho ari uko bashoboye gusohoka bagakora. Umwaka ushize twakoze campaign ikomeye, ari abo mu Rwanda, ari i Burayi, ari muri Amerika, ari muri Canada. Twegeranya ubufasha, kandi ubwo bufasha bwabagezeho, tugira icyo tubamarira. Nagira ngo rwose mbibashimire, nubwo n'ubundi twabivuze, ariko nagira ngo mbisubiremo. Kandi n'uyu mwaka twongeye kubikora muri iriya lockdown twagize, nubwo itabaye nk'iy'umwaka ushize, ariko uwo mutima turacyawufite. Kuko buriya ikintu gikomeye kibabaza ni uko mu gihe iyo umuntu yabuze ubuzima bwa buri munsi, anashaka kuvuga ibimubeshaho, akagira ibibazo, noneho na ya trauma irongera ikiyongera, noneho agasa nk'usubira muri bya bihe bya Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, igihe yahigwaga ibyamubaye byose ukabona yongeye kubisubiramo. Niyo mpamvu tuba turwana no kugira ngo rero tugire, mbese tubereke ko batari bonyine, turi kumwe nabo, tugerageze kubafasha, tubaganirize, ariko na bya bindi bakeneye tugerageze kubaba hafi. Abandi nshimira, ngira ngo hari umugenzi wanjye wigeze kubivuga, ngira ngo ni Jason wabivuze, no gushimira leta y'u Rwanda. Nubwo muri Amerika twebwe twaba turi mu Rwanda, ariko leta y'u Rwanda nta kitakoze mu by'ukuri, nta kitakoze. Ngira ngo na Emmanuel yabivuze, kitakoze kugira ngo bagerageze kumva abantu, imiryango yasenyutse, abantu barabamara, n'usigaye agasigara ari nyakamwe, agasigara nta kintu afite. leta imaze guhagarikana jenoside, ndavuga leta FPR, yakoze ibintu byose bishoboka kugira ngo abantu nibura bagire bwa buzima bw'ibanze, abana bashobora gusubira mu ishuri, abari badafite aho bakika umusaya babona aho barara, ariko cyane igikomeye iduha urubuga rwo kugira aho tuvugira n'aka kababaro, tukabwira isi, tuvuga ibyabaye muri jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Tubona uyu mwanya ari ku mbuga nkoranyambaga, ari naho kuri za site memorial tujyaho tukavuga jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Ikindi kintu ngira ngo mbabwire muri message yanjye, ntanatindaho kuko ndabizi ko mukizi, ni kwibuka. Why we have to remember? Why? Ngira ngo hariho uwigeze kubikomozaho, tugomba kwibuka kugira ngo tugerageze iteka ryose, tugerageze gusubiza agaciro abacu bakambuwe, igihe bajugunywe hirya no hino, igihe batemagurwaga, igihe babibiriyaga ko bashoboye. Ntabwo ngiye gutanga ubuhamya, ariko ngira ngo murabizi ko byagenze. Ntabwo babafataga nk'abantu, bari babambaye ubumuntu. Ubu rero twebwe tugomba kwibuka kugira ngo tubasubize ubumuntu. Ikindi ngira ngo mu kanya Emmanuel yumvise ubuhamya tubwiye, kwibuka bituma twongera kwibukiranya values z'abacu, ari ababyeyi bacu, ari abana bacu, ari abavandimwe bacu, ari abaturanyi, ari inshuti. Noneho bikanatuma n'abari abana bato, nishimiye yuko mwana batumye bakaba bari muri uyu muhango, bavanemo inyigo izatuma nabo bibeshaho. Duhora tuvuga ngo ntibazazima, ndashaka kuvuga abishwe muri jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, ntibazazima kandi twebwe turiho. Ubu rero tuba twerekana ko badashobora bariho kubera yuko tubibuka kandi tukabavuga. Ikindi ngira ngo ngarukeho uyu mugoroba, nicyo turimo gukora. Tugomba kwimenya, tugomba kumenya abo turibo, tugomba kumenya abo turibo, tukamenya histoire yacu, our history, tukamenya n'uburyo tugomba kurwana n'ubuzima bwo kuri iyi si, kuko abashaka kutumara ntabwo bagira ngo hatazagira n'umusigara, kandi n'uzasigara azabeho kandi abeho nabi, ari umusazi, nta shinge nta rugero. Twebwe rero twarabyanze, duhitamo resilience, duhitamo nkunda kuvuga gutera intambwe ijya imbere. Twebwe ni inshingano yacu, ariko tugomba no kwisigira abana bacu uwo murage, tukawusigira abana bacu, bagahora barwanira kubaho kandi bakabaho neza. Ikindi indi mpamvu tugomba kwibuka, nigize kubivuga, ni uko tugomba kwibuka, ngira ngo n'ubu ngubu turimo turabikora, kuko tugomba kubwira isi ibyatubayeho. Tugomba kubwira isi jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi mu Rwanda muri 1994. Ngiye kuno kuvuga ngo tugomba kuba abasipesialiste ba jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. We have to be specialists of genocide against Tutsi, because the genocide was planned by Rwandans. The genocide was against Rwandans, Tutsi, and genocide has been stopped by Rwandans. Mwumva iyo ni imwe muri difference n'izindi jenoside zabaye. Abantu bakunda kubyibaza, hariho n'ibindi zindi difference zihari, kuko ni jenoside yateguwe igihe kirekire kandi ishyirwamo imbaraga zirenze ukwemera. Niyo mpamvu nari mbigarutseho, ahantu jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi yashyizwemo n'abandi banyarwanda bari cyane bari mu bwoko bw'Abahutu, kugira ngo batsembe bagenzi babo b'abanyarwanda none bari mu bwoko bw'abatutsi. Ni imwe muri diferanse zikomeye kandi noneho ikaza guhagarikwa n'abandi bana b'abanyarwanda. So ikindi ngira ngo ngarukeho kandi gikomeye ngira ngo nanasaba ibuka US nubwo duhora tunakiganiraho muri ku ruhembe rw'umuheto nubwo twese tururiho, abahakana bagapfobya jenoside baridegembye hanze cyane cyane mu bihugu by'i Burayi ariko cyane cyane muri Amerika na za Canada yongeye. Ubwo rero muri ku ruhembe rw'umuheto uko iki gikorwa tuba twakoze cyo kwibuka mwateguye ni cano niko navuga ni cano yo kugira ngo dushobore kubwira abashaka kumva cyane cyane muri ibyo bihugu mubamo the pure reality, ibyabaye nyakuri, kuko nitutabibabwira nitutajya kuri urwo ruhembe rw'umuheto abaturanyi banyu babakiriye muri ibyo bihugu bazumva babandi birirwa bakoronga birirwa bababwira ibyo bahimbye babifate nka nkama babifate nk'aho ari byo kandi atari byo. Urumva rero ko mufite akazi gakomeye ko kugira ngo murwane nabyo. Mu minsi yashize hari strategy yo gushyira ku ibere, ndavuga abo ngabo birirwa bavuga ibyo bishakiye bavuga double genocide. Double genocide ubu ngubu isa nkaho ari ikinyoma cyabarenze kubera especially those two reports, the reports produced by the declare commission and news reports ngira ngo mwarazumvise zose. Ubu rero icya double genocide cyo kisa nkaho cyavuye ku murongo kubera yuko aba ni abashakashatsi babifatiye umwanya bafata n'igihe bashyiramo n'ingufu kugira ngo bagaragaze uburyo jenoside yakorewe abatutsi yateguwe n'uburyo yashyizwe mu bikorwa. Nta wundi uzongera kuvuga ngo jenoside ngo yakorewe abahutu ngo yarateguwe ngo cyangwa yateguwe nande yahagaritswe nande yakozwe nande. So ibyo byabarangiranye. So ibuka rero ndagira ngo nsabe ibuka US n'inshuti zanyu mwese mufate iya mbere kugira ngo mushobore kugira ngo muhige abo bajenosideri barakidegembya ari muri Amerika ari muri Canada. Hariho bagiye bahindura identities zabo ariko icyaha cya jenoside nagira ngo nibutse ko kitaramba nako kidashira nako gisaza, bazagira bafatwe nirakunda bagezwe imbere y'ubutabera bazanwa mu Rwanda cyangwa se bakaburanishwa ahangaha. Ndagira ngo rero nsuze iyi message nshimira cyane government ya USA mubamo aho muri, kubera ibikorwa nubwo wenda bitararangira dukomeza kubasaba ngo bakomeze munafatanyije mushake abo ba genocideri nyine, ariko hari abo bohereje mu Rwanda. Ngira ngo mu minsi ishize muzi umugore witwa Beatrice Munyenyezi yageze intanga yatangiye kuburanishwa. Ni ikintu cyo kwishimira. Muhera aho ngaho mubwire isi, mubwire abanyamerika ibyo abo bantu birirwa babeshya, mubabwire ibyo basize bakoze kandi facts zirahari, bazafatwa. Hanyuma rero nsoze nkuko nigeze kubivuga, nshimira leta yacu, nshimira leta y'u Rwanda ingufu bakoresha, kuko Munyenyezi ntabwo yapfuye kuza, hagiyemo ingufu nyinshi n'abandi kandi aho bari ntibibwire yuko tutabizi. Murakoze kandi nongere nkomeze mbihanganishe umunsi mwiza kandi mukomere.
Thank you again, brother Egide Nkuranga. Egide Nkuranga started off saying that he wanted to speak in Kinyarwanda, in our mother language, and I will try to summarize a little bit of key points. He started off saying that it's not easy to fully understand what genocide survivors went through. It really requires to fully pay attention and be patient. He also, like many others say, thanked the government of Rwanda for the continuous support they keep giving survivors. He also mentioned that it's very important to thank IBUKA USA, as this is the first event it's the first time to organize this type of events, and I hope we'll keep doing so. He also talked about that it is our responsibility as genocide survivors to keep spreading the words, to be able to stand up and fight against the ideology or those who deny the genocide. He also mentioned that a lot of those who use genocide for their own benefits or for their own hidden agenda, most of them, they live here in the United States or in Canada. So he tried to remind us that we need to be aware of that and speak for those who died and be able to be specialists, because we survived, we know what we went through, and we cannot allow those who twist the history for their own gain. I think that's the best I can do. Next, we're going to have Senate Antoine Mugesera. If he is ready, this is your time. Senator Mugesera, are you with us right now?
We are working on it.
All right, perfect.
Ndabashuhuje. Sorry, nagize ikibazo cya tekinike n'ibi byuma byankundiye gukora neza, n'ubu ishusho si nziza, ariko ndashaka kubashimira iki gitekerezo cyiza mwagize cyo gufungura ibuka iwanyu. Igitekerezo cyiza cyagiye kibaho hirya no hino, ubu ni mwebwe mugikoze kandi kizakomeza. Ni igitekerezo gikomeye kuko abantu bacu ntitubyibagirwa, ntitutibuka jenoside yakorewe abatutsi ishobora kwibagirana, nitwebwe tugomba gushyiramo ingufu. Bari basabye kubabwira ku byerekeye politiki ari mu Rwanda mbere ya jenoside, ndabivuga mu magambo makeya. Niba mushaka kumenya aho jenoside yaturutse, wababaza ati nk'umunyamahanga mwaganira, akabwira ati jenoside yatewe n'iki, yaje iti. Ugomba kugira ibisubizo biri clear, fututse, umusubiza muti yatewe n'iki, kuki yabaye uriya mwaka, niba yarabaye mbere, niba yarabaye inyuma, niba ikaba muri 1994. Ugomba kugira igisubizo mu mubwire, muzanamubwira ko muzarwanya wayirwanya. Uyu munsi ari n'aba twakoze y'umuryango wa Cyama, twabivuzeho kuko twavuga ko ziriya za raporo zaje zombi, tuvuga ukuntu hari hakwiye kujyaho urubuga network international iriho arigima zose zirwanya buri ngingo bavuga kuri kugupfobya jenoside. Abanegasionisti bafite uburyo si bwinshi, twigeze kuba ugeze kuri 40, hanyuma tugera tugwegeranya tugira 20 nazo, ugakora liste yazo, warangiza ukavuga uti iyi ya mbere abanegasionisti bakoresha arigima ziyitsinda n'izihe, nazo ukazishyira ku murongo. Twifuzaga ko uzabibona, yenda bizakunda ko abari hanze, jewe nafite abana bari muri Australia no muri Sweden, iyo hari umunegationiste wazaga gutanga conference muri university yabo, barambwiraga bati waduharigima tuza gukoresha, ukabona ko abana badafite tuzi, badafite uburyo bwo guhita basubiza umunegationiste ako kanya, kandi harigima zirahari. Twagombye gushyiraho urubuga, twebwe umuntu wese akandaho, urubuga international, umuntu wese akandaho akabona uzavuga iki, habaye jenoside ebyiri, turarigima zimutsinde. Uzavuga ngo aho tubakorewe jenoside, dore uzavuga ngo ni RPF yishe Habyarimana dorari kimaze mutsinda twenda n'ingingo 20 mushatse twazazibaha zivuga buri ngingo yose n'ingingo zitsinda contrary argument ni ibintu mwagombye kuzakora bari ngaho kandi ntibafite uburyo bwinshi ubona bisubiramo ibibazo usanga bakoresha uburyo butarenze 20 bisubiramo ariko kuko bari bansabye kuvuga ibyerekeye politiki ari icyo gihe ngiye kubabwira ni virus yatumye genocide iba u Rwanda rwabaho imyaka myinshi yenda muri mwe bakunze gukurikira amateka bazi ko iriya ngoma nyinshi yabaho by'uri imyaka 800 byibura muzabaza impamvu iriya ngoma yarambye nimumenye ibanga ryayo yabambye kuko abanyarwanda bose bibonaga ari bamwe bafite bariyuze zimwe bafite n'agaciro zimwe bafite imyumvire imwe bafite imyemerere imwe bafite imana imwe bafite byose ari bimwe bafite ubuyobozi bumwe bose bibonamo kugira ngo ingoma imara imyaka 800 minimum nuko yafite ibintu by'ibanga ifite ni inclusivity ko abantu bose bayibonagamo ikintu cyabaye abanyarwanda bajya kwita abahutu abatwatutsi ntibari bazi biri abazungu bazanye byitwa ngo ni hamite n'abantu ntabwo abanyarwanda bita abahutu ntabwo bari bazi ibyo ni ugushakira ahandi byaguye abantu bita bega abanyiginya ntabwo bose kandi ukasanga harimo abahutu abatwatutsi mugomba kumenya ibanga mwebwe ku cyose mu bega usangamo abahutu ugasangamo abatwa usangamo abatutsi kuki mu banyiginya usangamo abatwa abahutu n'abatutsi kuki mu bazigaba usangamo abahutu abatwa n'abatutsi ibyo nibyo kandi ingoma yacu yagendeye ingoma yarambye kandi abo bantu batuyoboye imyaka 800 bari bafite imyambi ntabwo bafite amasasu kandi ntibari benshi kandi bamaze imyaka ingana kuriya singufu bakoresheje inclusivity barere zimwe kumva kimwe kwibona muri bimwe kumva mu buyobozi bumwe kwimva mu cyese bumwe kwimva mu myemerere imwe kwimva muri n'agaciro zimwe bararamba icyo tuzakora mu Rwanda ubu ngubu mushaka icyatsi nuko twakongera kubaka ikintu abanyarwanda bose bibonamo nk'abanyarwanda bashaka umuhutu bashaka umwega bashaka umunyinya bashaka umutso bashaka biki ariko aho ugiye hose ugasanga uri umunyarwanda hose ubunyarwanda bukaruta bukaba bwari kurusha kuba umuhutu icyo bari bakayibanda bakoze abazungu baraje murabizi icyo bazanye abanyarwanda batari bazi baravuze ngo bari abantu si bamwe ntibavuka hamwe ntibaziye rimwe bavuye ahantu banyuranye ngo bamwe ni bantu ngo bane ni amite abandi ntabwo abanyarwanda biyita amazina y'abahutu n'abatwa n'abatutsi bari bazi ibyo bya hamite ntabwo bari babize to nabusa ni ibintu abazungu bazanye abagiye kwiga amashuri yabo rero barabyemeye babyumva bati ntituri bamwe ntituva hamwe ntitwaziye rimwe twagize tuti icyo kintu ni uburozi ni virus yaciye u Rwanda rwari maze imyaka 800 babonye ko rugifite ubumwe kuko bamwe bibonye abagiye kwiga amashuri y'abazungu nibo bamize iyo virus yo guca abanyarwanda mu bice bayigira iyabo n'abatutsi n'abahutu bayigize iyabo hari ikintu muri 59 cy'inkubiri y'ubwigenge kugira ngo ibihugu b'independant uko byaje nabyo murabizi ibihugu byabaye colonize uko nibo murabuzi byashatse kubona independence kandi abazungu bari baboye mu ntambara yabo ya 40-45 ibihugu Aziya ibihugu bya Afurika ibihugu bindi byose byabafashe kurwanya intambara zabo barangire baravuga ati turashaka ubwigenge Aziya niyo yabanje Ubuhinde ushaka ubwigenge ibindi bihugu bikurikira Indochine niba muzizi Chine muri 19 abazungu ibihugu byose byari byafashije abazungu kurwanya intambara yabo bavuga ati turashaka ubwigenge bari basanze abazungu n'abari abantu kuko abazungu ntibarushaga abandi kurwana muri Afurika nabyo biraza abitwa ba Sekuture abitwa ba muri Ghana abitwa ba Nkuruma abitwa ba Naseri abitwa bati turashaka ubwigenge barabubona ko mu Rwanda naho iyo nkubiri y'amashyaka menshi iraza abanyarwanda bari barafatanije n'itsinda ry'abatutsi bari ko abazungu baje no barangije baravuga ati turafatanya n'itsinda ritoya kandi iryo tsinda turarikora mu batutsi abo batutsi nibo tuzafatanya gukora n'abakoloni n'amakuba kuko ugomba gukoresha ingufu mu banyarwanda bene wanyu barayikoresha ariko ni abantu bake cyane. Icyaje kuba nuko abo banyarwanda bumvise inkubiri ya independence bavuze bati basubira iwabo natwe tubende panda. Ababiri bavuga ati basha twabashyize ku ibere none murashaka kutwirukana iwacu, murashaka kutwirukana mwebwe batutsi banga ndwara, reka tubereke. Baragenda bazana abandi bantu bitwa abahutu nabona agatsiko k'abahutu bati twateteje abatutsi, reka tubakuyeho tubahe ubutegetsi twahaye abatutsi, kandi nibo bari barabuhaye koko. Nibo bari bwambuye abahutu kuko abahutu barabiboraga nk'abandi bose. Bamwe bayoboraga ibyerekeye inka, abandi bakayobora ibyerekeye ingabo, abandi bakayobora ibyerekeye ubutaka, abandi ubwatsi. Hari ubutegetsi buvangavanze n'abahutu bibonamo n'abatutsi bibonamo, babihinduye muri 30. Abo banyarwanda bakoranye no gukora ako gatsiko gatoya abantu bakijyana abatutsi batutashaka batibasha, ariko ntaba mu Rwanda gusa, no muri Kongo hazabitwa barumwumba, hazabitwa ba Burundi, hazabitwa bari wagasore bati aba bantu barahagurutse, nimureke tubereke twabashyize kuri bere twabatetesheje none bashaka kutwirukana, reka natwe tubereke bazifata ahandi hariya. Nazakiza bari barafatanije zirabigarika barabakubita baragenda. Muzi byabaye muri 5 simbitindaho batwica abatutsi. Noneho rero bakora ishyano bashobora gukora revolution, bakora iyo ngoma ya cyami bakayikuraho, ariko ntibimike irondabwoko. Bakoza amahano, bakuyeho ingoma ya cyami bafatanyije n'ababirigi, kuko n'ababirigi bategekaga abandi bo bari ibikoresho, bari muto bari igikoresho, bagitaye bari igikoresho, bakayimana bari igikoresho. Twari tutarabona ubwigenge bwabaye mu 32 ejo bundi twari bari hano i Kigali. Baravuga ati ba bantu twari twatetesheje baratugarutse, abandi bahita bagaruka nyine bafata agatsiko k'abapari muhutu babaparikiramo cya kintu cy'irondabwoko, ni muri bamwe, ni muvuka hamwe, ni mugira mute. N'abantu bari barabyemeye. N'ubu ngubu nk'ubisa bitwa bari bo Mugesera bavuga ngo abatutsi bazasubira muri wabo muri Ethiopia. Buriya ni ya virisi banduye icyo gihe yarangiye. Nize ko muzi ibintu by'amategeko ya Gitera muze by'akayibanda byose. Kayibanda bati none abatutsi tubakubite. Barabakubita, ntibakubita bari ku buyobozi, ntibakubita kuko iryo tsinda ry'abatutsi bari n'abakeya. Bari 10,000. Abandi bari abatutsi bahinga borora bagira bati, ariko basanzwe bize ko mubizi. Barabakubita barabirukana, ariko noneho birukana ukitwa umututsi, ntibareba ko ufite ikosa, ntibareba ko wategetse, ntibareba ko wagize akayengane, bakubita abatutsi. Kuko uri umututsi gusa byabaye muri 59 bakatwikiye abaturanyi mwabaye utigeze utwara. Niho hari kabirisi kirondabwoko. Kayibanda akorera muri ibyo Habyarimana akorera. Ejo bundi rero impamvu Genocide yabaye ejo bundi muri 94 nuko ingoma ya Habyarimana yari ifite virisi ebyiri. Iya mbere yari iyo ngiyo ya kera y'irondabwoko, abahutu barukwabo, abatutsi barukwabo, abatwa barukwabo ntibazanye. Haza ni virisi ya kabiri, haza inkubiri y'amashyaka ya politiki. Amashyaka ya politiki araza aza akomeye, ashobora gukora ngiye kuyabwira nka RPF yifatanya n'amashyaka nka MDR na PSD n'andi ukorana yarahari abantu bakoranaga nayo. No mu matora byonyine Habyarimana yari gutsindwa, MRND yari gutsindwa, Habyarimana azi ko azatsindwa. No mu matora yonyine n'inkotanyi zo zari zaremeye rwose tuzakore n'amashyaka ari mu Rwanda, bati tuzakorana nayo. Habyarimana arabibona ko umuntu wamwandikiye bwa mbere 92 avuga ati kandi tuzatsindwa. Uwitwa Mfizi yacyariho yamwaye ikibaruho ko officiellement réseau zero bize ko muri avuga ati tuzatsindwa, MRN izatsindwa. Abandi bore bayituka bamakingira umwatsi nabo bati tuzatsindwa, baramwandikira bati tuzatsindwa. Icyo yakoze ari amatora ari kuzatsindwa byageze muri 92. Inkotanyi nazo ziraza sinzi akantu kabaye zikubita abafari ayitwa gafari, ingabo za Habyarimana ziraza zigera ahangaha Shyorongi ni Kigali, hafi ya Kigali. Habyarimana arikanga ati no mu gisirikare ashobora gutsindwa ku matora yatsindwa, no mu gisirikare yatsindwa. Arabibona neza ko ashobora gutsindwa. Ati gisigaye ni iki? Ati gisigaye nuko uko byanyera kose natsindwa nagira nuko batuzwa bagomba gushira mu Rwanda. Bari abatsi bashobora kumfata, inkotanyi ishobora kunsinda, nuko bazasanga mwene wabo nuko abatutsi bazize iki bitwa ko ari support ingoma y'inkotanyi, nta kindi support kuko baravuga bati nibo bashobora gutanga amakuru, nibo bashobora kohereza ingabo mu nkotanyi, nibo bashobora kubabwira situation yose, nibo bashobora kubagemurira, nibo bashobora kuyaguta, kuko babona ko impunzi ari nkeya. Baravuga ati icyo ari cyo cyose nuko uko byagenda kose inkotanyi naho zatsinda nta mutuzo bazasanga mu Rwanda, kuko abatutsi nibo bitwaga ko ari bo support ya, bashobora no kuba support no motor support ya ingoma ya inkotanyi. Barabica bafata decision ko ibindi murabizi, ko bashyizeho amashyaka, ko bashyizeho amasoresore yitwa impuzamugambi, interahamwe, ibyo murabizi. Icyo cyabaye nuko leta ya Habyarimana yageze ahantu hakomeye, iravuga iti tagisigaye, yiyemeza kumara abatutsi no guca amashyaka mo ibice, barema ikintu cyitwa Hutu Power, cya kintu cyakoze ishyano, ya mashyaka adasenyuka, adashwanyuka, MDR, PSD, PL agagumaho. Ntabwo Genocide yari gushoboka, ariko yashobotse kuko ari MDR yavuyeho, ni nayo yabanje kuzana ibibazo. Muri bukabirukana gata muri bakoze inama, yenda murabizi, bakoze inama yo kubusuza, baramwirukana mu nama. Icyo gihe amashyaka ashwanyuka yose, nta ryasigaye, na PSD twagira ngo ni igitangaza, yashwanyuka. Habyarimana ari mu cyitwa Hutu Power, yafatanyije n'Abafaransa, witwa Dobarge, nanize ko muzi wo mu Faransa, niwe wavuga ati mwebwe turage mwe nishyire hamwe mwese, ibyo by'amashyaka menshi nimubwire ki. Baravuga ngo barabireka ko okay, bubaka ikintu cyitwa Hutu Power. Hutu Power rero yatsinze, hanyuma ikora Genocide yakunda. Niba hari ikintu cyakunze Genocide, kuko inkotanyi mwabibonye uko zarwanaga, ni naho narindi. Igice kimwe nize ko mubizi cyagiye gukingira hariya mu Ruhengeri na Gisenyi kugira ngo bo gutabara. Ikindi gice cy'inkotanyi kizi Kigali, ariko cyari Kigali cyamaze amezi 3 kitarafata umujyi wa Kigali, wafashwe mu kwezi kwa 7. Icyagiye ku Gisenyi nacyo cyagumye aho ngaho. Abakoze urugendo runini yabari bagiye east, bagiye muri Kibungo, Mugesera, Nyanza, Gitarama, bajya muri Sud. Bora nabo bamaze iminsi ijana kugira ngo bagere Butare ukwezi kwa 7 ku itariki ya 3. Ntabwo inkotanyi zashoboye gutangira, iyo zitangira nk'i Burundi, zindi zatangira Icyangugu, yenda bari kugira icyoko, ariko baziye imigi itatu, kandi Genocide yatangiye hose icyarimwe. Niyo mpamvu abatutsi barashize bidamo, hasigaye ingereri. Icyo nashaka kubabwira amagambo makeya ni uko Genocide yashobotse, nuko yatangira icyarimwe, bari bateguye ingabo abantu babo, none abantu bose babyirohamo, bose ba guverineri, abasirikare, nta na batayo n'imwe, nta na peloton n'imwe, nta na kompanyi n'imwe zigeze ziba ku ngabo za Habyarimana ngo zisange RPF. Nta ba guverineri bose, ba prefe bose, cyane kuri Butare n'uw'Ikibungo, Butare baramwishe, n'uw'Ikibungo baramwica, abandi bose abitwaga ba prefe, n'uw'Igitarama bitwaga Fidel Wizeye, abandi bose byose muri jose, ba burugumestre bose cyeka babiri bose, inzego zose zagiye. Nukuvuga kandi Genocide yaberaga icyarimwe hose, irashoboka ko yashobotse. Ikindi cyanyuma cyabaye nuko nta autorité morale, nta mupadiri, nta mupasitori, nta n'umwe bavuga ati iki kintu kirazira, nta n'umwe. Twabuze autorité morale, tubura ingufu zisanzwe, ibintu birahwaniramo, abantu barapfa barashira tusemba ko habuze n'umwe. Abantu bari baragiye muri iyo ngoma, bari baremeye virus, bari baramize uburozi, bamizwe n'ingoma ya Babirigi, n'ingoma ya Kayibanda, n'ingoma ya Habyarimana, n'ingoma ya Sindikubwabo. Abantu ntibari banabizi cyane. Yagiye Butare, mwabonye perezida kwigisha igice cy'abaturage, ubwe niyo ku Kongo no ku Kibagiye, avuga ati nimwice abatutsi, kuko abaturage bose ntacyo bapfaga n'abatutsi, ntacyo abatutsi bapfaga n'abahutu. Iyo wagiye icyo wapfa mwari kubibona, abatutsi baba iyo wikanga ko Genocide zabo bari kuba baratuye ukwabo, abahutu batuye ukwabo, abatwa baratuye ukwabo, ariko batuye hamwe. Ni ukuvuga ko twamaze imyaka igihumbi n'igihumbi nta wikanga ko ashobora gukorerwa Genocide. Niyo mpamvu twatuye hamwe. Ahandi usanga amoko tribes, usanga ziri ukwazo kurya kwacu guturana kuko twari bamwe bisanzwe ntacyo twikangaga ariko hari iyo virus iratuma bagabo make ndashaka kubashimira mufite urugamba ruhije komeye muri Amerika hari abantu benshi bakubagana bari negationist ariko ntibarusha ab'Iburayi ikibazo dufite cyaho no muri Canada nacyo ari kumwe abato babirimo abato babyinjiyemo twari dufite inshuti z'abayahudi zikatubaza ziti kandi murabe maso izi nkota abo bantu barokotse genocide nyuma y'imyaka 25 hashobora reaction zabo abarokotse genocide reaction zabo ituzi uko zizaba zimeze ese bazakora iki kuko abantu barihisha bagasana si ukwihisha umuntu amira ikintu kimuvuna yaturumbuka ashobora guturumbuka nabi muzamenye bari abavandimwe bacu bacitse ku icumu ntuzi uko ahagurutse uko haguruka na reaction ze ntiwazimira twabibonaga iyo twashinguraga abantu n'ubu turacyabikubona urabibona bikagutangaza twataburaga imibiri yabo murabizi wenda sinzi ko mubizi abato ntibabizi noneho tugashyira hariya abadamu bakajya kuyoza tukabona abayoza bagatinda ukabona muri bo hari abarira vuba abari babaye intwaro ukabona barandoza bakagira neza none tukavuga uyu urakagabusha wihanganye uwo ngo wihanganye wajya kubona ukabona atubitse na ukabona yakoze cybayitegereza kuko ni nko kwimira hanyuma bikamunanira akabyerekana extermination y'akababaro barafite ahita yiyerekana ako kanya ahita yiyerekana ariko abo banje kurwana n'ubu rero batubwiye bati muzamenya abana abo bari scape nyuma y'imyaka 25 reaction zabo ntawuzi uko zizagenda umwe ashobora guturumbuka akavuga ibintu atagomba kuvuga undi ashobora guturumbuka akora reaction ze ntibazimenya ni ukuvuga umushinzwe icyo bita encadrement yabo ni ukubaba hafi kuko ntituzi uko bashobora kureagisa reaction zabo ntituzi uko byagenda bashobora rero gukora ibintu tutazi baranatubwiye ko n'abana b'intera hamwe baratubwiye ati n'abana b'abahutu bakoze ishyano bafite base bakoze ishyano ntimuzi uko bazakora ntabwo muzi reaction yabo bashobora nabo kuvumbuka baba positifu baba negatifu baba iki mube maso situation imbere yacu ishobora ntituzi uko izagenda ari mu barescape ushobora kubona umwe aturumbuka reaction ntuyimenye kuko ntitwamwegereye nitumwegereye bazarokoka ushobora kubona umwana w'umuhutu ushobora kubona umwana w'umututsi ushobora kubona ibintu byinshi mumenye ko intambara mufite ari ndende icyo dushaka ni ukugira ingufu kandi mwakoze gushinga ibukano no gushaka amaboko mushaka amaboko aho muri mushaka amaboko mu bantu benshi no kuba gusa mwenyine aho mushake ambiroma favora mwubake amaboko yanyu mugire ikintu kandi mushyigikire na leta kuko nimutayishyigikira muzaba mwishize iruhande kandi nta mwibujije amaboko hari bifasha byinshi mugomba kubuza abanyu banyura iruhande kuko ashobora kuvumbuka utazi icyo avumbukanye mwaba mwiciye amaboko ni ingufu mwibanaho ingufu mushaka ingufu ubwo mujye hose no hano abino mu Rwanda twagwase no ku mudugudu ni mujyeyo bo kuvuga ibintu bireba basikabe mudahari no muri segiteri ni division y'umurenge ni mujyemo mwumva ibyo bavuga hari ibyo batinya kuvuga kuko hari ni mujyemo hari ibyo batinya kuvuga kuko bakubona iyo udahari bivuga icyo bashaka namwe mugomba kubikora mukaba present na reaction izibaye umuzungu yandika ikintu muri conference y'iki mukareba uko mu burwanyi kandi mugashyira ingufu kandi mukarigima hamwe umwe ntabwe ku buryo disperse umwe kuri association nziza mukaba mwibutse mukagira association aho ibitekerezo byanyu bikajya hamwe uzavuga iki jide river arigima zo mukazisenya kuko zirahari zose kumusenya witwa Agency witwa muri Canada bahe biroroshye kubasenya arigima zo mwashatse umuntu azibohereza zirahari ariko zikajya hamwe nabibabwira twari dufite abana bari muri Canada bambe bari muri Sweden bari muri Australia iteka hazaga umuntu utanga conference ya batubaza bace tuvuga iki twagombye kubategurira ibyo bavuga aho umuntu ari n'icyo abwira abari umuntu nawe n'icyo abwira abagenzi be mu ishuri akavuga ati genocide ni akabivuga kandi afite arigima za nyazo kugira ngo ntarambirana bashimiye uyu muhango mwiza mudukoreye, mbashimiye igitekerezo cyiza mwagize, mbashimiye urugamba mugiyeho, muzabiyeho mukomeje. Ni urugamba kandi uzatinda, ntimujye ngo biyoroshye, ni urugamba ruzatinda cyane, ntimujye ngo bizarangira kuko mubuze jenoside yagatsindwa n'agasani nyirakagenda ubusa. Ni urugamba rukomeye cyane, bizababuna, muzagomba kurwana ku buryo bwinshi, ariko regima zo ziroroshye, regima zo zirazwi, nuko gusa ziturumbuka utakekaga, ukabona umwarimu wakwigishaga yarabivuze undi arabivuze. Ndashaka kubashimira kugira ngo ntarambirana, ndabashimiye cyane, ibindi tuzakomeza. Murakoze gusuhuza hirya no hino, baza gusoza, muze gusuhuza abana bacu bari aho ngaho iwanyu, kandi mu Rwanda murisanga. Merci.
Kugira ngo mbashimire tukibafite Antoine, Senateri Antoine Mugesera, ku butumwa bwiza mutugejejeho bwuzuye urukundo kandi tubufata ku mutima, kandi natwe tuzabatenguha. I was thanking Senator Antoine Mugesera for the powerful message that he just delivered. He pretty much encouraged the younger generations to be aware of those who deny genocide. It's going to be an ongoing battle, but we just don't have to shy away. It is genocide survivor responsibilities to stand up and fight for our freedom and fight for what is right. We are fully aware of those who deny genocide. A lot of people who are twisting the history for their own benefit. But he kept saying that we cannot allow that to keep going on. But it is our responsibility to take on and take steps to move forward, so we cannot give them platform. And the responsibility we share them as every single Rwandans. And this is not only for survivors, even those who have background in Hutu families. As long as they did not kill, we are in this together. This is not only for us as survivors. I think it was very powerful, and it was a pleasure to have you with us. And it was very powerful, and we took it to the heart. So before we move on to the next part of our event, let's play one more song. And after that, I'm going to introduce Yvonne. She's going to lead us into the next part of this event, which is going to be a panel discussion. Please, if I have the technicians, the IT person, Alex, please play a song while Yvonne's getting ready and her team. Thank you.
Kubera k'uyu munsi twaje ku rwibutso, kubera k'uyu munsi twaje kubibuka, kubera intimba nyinshi iri ku mutima, kubera urukumbuzi ufitiye abo wabuze, kubera abana b'ibitambambuga bicwaga batazi n'icyo bazira, kubera ababyeyi bishwe by'urubozo bakabanza kubicira abana mu maso. Kuko mvuga ibyo ukumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, nkaba mbivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga, kuko iyo nkuru umva ari ubuhamya bwawe, iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho. Kubera yuko yishwe mudaherukana, ukaba utaramenye byibura n'agakuru ke, ntiwigeze umenya n'aho bamujugunye, cyangwa se ngo umenye ijambo rya nyuma yavuze. Ukumbura ya minsi mukiri kumwe, ibyo bihe byiza byose ubu byabaye amateka. kuko mvuga ibyo ukumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, nkaba mbivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga, kuko iyo nkuru wumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho. Ndagusabye ntiwibuka, maze ukumva imbaraga zibaye nke. Ndagusabye ntiwibuka, maze ukumva inimbira kuganje. Ntiwibuka urupfu abawe bishwe, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Ntiwibuka agahinda bajyanye, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Kubera ko wagiye uzi kuzabasanga, kubera ko wasanze bose barashize, aho mwari mutuye wasanze ari amatongo, abari bahatuye nabo usanga barishwe. Kuko mvuga ibyo ukumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, nkaba mbivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga, kuko iyo nkuru wumva ari ubuhamya bwawe, iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho. Kubera yuko mwirwanye uko mushoboye, mugira ngo murebe ko byibura bucya kabiri. Kubera bababyeyi barundaga amabuye, barunda amabuye mu bitenge bahereza abagabo. Kubera babasaza na ya miheto yabo, kubera bya bikwerere na ya macumu yabo. Kubera ya nzara n'inyota ya cya gihe, kubera amabuye yarwanaga n'amasasu. Kubera cya gihe twigabizwa n'ibitero, aho niho ababyeyi baherukana n'abana, aho niho abana baherukana n'ababyeyi. Iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho. Ndagusabye ntiwibuka, maze ukumva imbaraga zibaye nke. Ndagusabye ntiwibuka, maze ukumva inimbira kuganje. Ntiwibuka urupfu abawe bishwe, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Ntiwibuka agahinda bajyanye, jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye. Abo wibuka none reka nge ngusaba, niwibuka kagahinda bajyanye. Uje wibuka na bya bihe byiza bimwe mwagiranye, cya gihe mukiri kumwe. Kandi uje wibuka kwabawe batazimye, kandi uje wibuka iteka wiyubaka. Kubera yuko abawe batigeze bazima, kubera yuko ya mashami yashibutse,
ndagira ngo muvandimwe ngira icyo ngusaba ugerageze maze umwenyure gake kubera turiya twana tw'utwuzukuru twabo kubera ayo mashami babarira useke gato maze wibuke kwabawe batazimye maze wongere uhobera ubuzima maze ugerageze wumva icyanga cyo kubaho maze ugerageze wongere kubaho kuko iyo nkuru wumva ari ubuhamya bwawe nkaba nyivuga ukumva ari wowe mvuga kuko iyo nkuru wumva ari ubuhamya bwawe iyo nkuru reka nyirekeraho ndagusabye niwibuka maze ukumva imbaraga zibaye nke ndagusabye niwibuka maze ukumva inimbira kuganje niwibuka urupfu abawe bishwe jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye niwibuka agahinda bajyanye jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye niwibuka agahinda bajyanye jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye niwibuka agahinda bajyanye jya wibuka n'ibihe byiza mwagiranye.
Thank you so much for the song. It was very wonderful and deep, and I wish the lyrics were in English. It pretty much took us back in 1994. It was a reminder of what we went through, long nights, sleepless nights, how our loved ones were killed. He also said something very important, that we cannot always stay low. We need to step up and have a life. The life continues. The singer also said, although we remember them, those who passed, it's very important to remember the beautiful memories they left behind with us. So as we keep remembering them, I urge you all to remember that they loved us, they were courageous, they loved their families. We have so much good to remember about them. Before I take so long, please let me welcome Yvonne Umugwaneza to take on the next part of our events. We're going to be talking about mental health. If Yvonne is ready, please, it's your time.
Thank you, Landry. Thanks for everyone who's present with us here today. We are going to talk about mental health, and Today we are with Pastor Antoine Rutayisire. He's the senior pastor of Remera Anglican Church. He is the current chairman of African Enterprise, an organization that is committed to bring healing, reconciliation, strength, and renewal back to the disillusioned and devastated Rwandan church and nation. He also served as a commissioner on the National Unity and Reconciliation Commission in Rwanda from 1999 to 2012. He was in charge of drafting and supervising the implementation of the national policy for reconciliation in Rwanda. He is very passionate about reconciliation, and he also has a book that is coming out this May. The name of the book is Reconciliation is My Lifestyle. When it's out, people will be able to access it on Pembroke Publishers and Amazon. There is also Pathways to Reconciliation. This is also another book that is in the pipeline from Pastor Rutayisire. We are also going to be with Beth Meyerowitz. She's a professor of psychology and preventive medicine at the University of Southern California. Professor Meyerowitz holds a PhD in clinical psychology, and she is the vice provost for the Faculty of Programmatic Development since 2011. Currently, she's conducting research projects that includes investigation of quality of life and coping among the partners of cancer survivors and the impact on the patient adjustment to the diagnosis, adjustment to life with cancers that includes prostate cancer and gynecological cancers for women. Over the years after treatment, she's also working on the research that looks into cognitive functioning among older long-term cancer survivors and quality of life. These studies she conducts are being conducted in a variety of clinical settings, including cancer centers and public and private hospitals. On top of that, her work with the survivors, cancer survivors, Meyerowitz has been studying trauma and resilience among genocide survivors in Rwanda. So today I want to welcome them to this panel. And before we dive into their role as a pastor and as a clinical psychologist, I would like to start with Antoine. Please help us understand your journey as a genocide survivor, not only a 1994 genocide survivor, but also somebody who survived other massacres against the Tutsi that occurred in Rwanda prior to 1994. I would like to hear from you as one of many. What was your mental health, journey? How was your mental health process throughout that? And when you look back to the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, 25 years on, how do you feel about your own mental health, and how did you do to process that and to be healthy, mentally?
Thank you, Yvonne. Actually, for me, the genocide against the Tutsis of 1994 didn't affect me so deeply as did the other massacres against the Tutsis, mainly the one that went on from 1959 up to 63, because that's when I lost my dad and we lost our property. And the one of 1973, when civil servants were kicked out of their jobs and students were kicked out of our schools. Actually, those two, and then the 1983, that one was quite different because it wasn't physical, but it was more about destroying your dreams. Actually, by 1983, I was a lecturer at the university, an assistant lecturer, and my dream was to become a great university professor. And I had received a Fulbright scholarship to go study in the US. And in those days, going to the US was going to heaven. Everybody dreamed of going to the US. The US was like a kind of another space out of the world. And then while I was preparing to go, I received this letter from the Ministry of Higher Education. By then, we had two ministries of education. There was the Ministry of Higher Education, which catered for the universities and scientific research. And then we had the primary school and secondary school ministry. I received this letter from the Ministry of Higher Education, and it was written in French. It went like this. Actually, I've memorized the letter. It went on like this. Monsieur Rutayisire Antoine, Faculté des Lettres, Université nationale du Rwanda, campus de Ruhengeri. Messieurs, pour des raisons d'État, tu n'es plus à la faculté de l'Université nationale du Rwanda, tu as été redéployé à l'école secondaire. Prière approcher le dit ministère pour ton redéploiement. So actually, that was the letter that destroyed everything I had toiled for many years. And the letter, for those who don't understand French, goes like this. Sir, for government reasons, you are no longer on the faculty of the University of Rwanda. You've been redeployed in the secondary school. So that was just a heavy blow on my long dreamed ambition. And the consequence was very devastating. Actually, I will just give a brief overview because the 1994 genocide came at a time when I had healed from all those traumas. Emmanuel spoke about his spiritual experience, and it was the same experience I went through, because when I got redeployed from the university into lower level secondary school, because I went from the university to Tronkome, for those who know the system in Rwanda, that's lower level secondary school. It was very devastating. Actually, you feel useless. You go from teaching at the university and then you go to a place where you go, actually, just to give you an example, you go from teaching Shakespeare, because I was a teacher in the Department of Literature, I was lecturing in the Department of Literature, and you go to teaching kids to conjugate the verb to be. So you just sit there and you feel useless because you are just, anyway, I don't think you can feel it. Or maybe you can guess and try to feel it. So during that time, when I was going through that period, that's when I started reading the Bible. And then I got converted. I got saved. And I became a preacher, but a preacher full of anger and hatred and bitterness, until the Lord made me see the kind of contradiction I was living. So I dealt with my contradictions, I dealt with my wounds, then I became whole. As a matter of fact, I've summarized a long process in a few words. So 1994 came at a time when I had totally learned how to process my emotions and control them. I know how to monitor my emotions, I know how to control them, and I know how to hold them in balance. But speaking of mental health, let me start with the 1961, actually 59, 60, 61 period. When you read my book, I wrote Reconciliation is My Lifestyle. I call that period stolen childhood, because as a child, my dad was a businessman. Actually, that's why he didn't leave the country, because he said, well, if they are killing the leaders, the chiefs and the king and so on, I've never been a chief. I'm a businessman, I do business with everybody. But he didn't expect that by 1963, the government will take the decision and implement it to kill every Tutsi who was influential. And that included the wealthy, the educated, and those who have been in power. And my dad was killed in that month, end of December 1963. For those who know the history of Rwanda, by then President Kayibanda gave order that every Tutsi of influence, in just 1 week, between the 23rd of December and the 28th, actually, it was only 6 days, more than 40,000 Tutsis were massacred. It was an intense massacre, actually same magnitude as the genocide against the Tutsis of 1994. So that's when my dad was killed. So from a wealthy family, we became a very poor family. My dad disappeared. And then that affected me so much because, and this is the first question I've seen many survivors living with, the question of unanswered questions. You just wonder, because our dads were taken, they were killed, and we didn't know where they were murdered. They weren't buried. So you live your life wondering, where did my father die?
Pastor,
when did he die? Yes?
If you allow me, can you hold on? Can you hold that thought? We're gonna come back to that thought in our next question, if you allow me.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Professor Beth, I know you've been in Rwanda more than once, and you've worked with different people, you've worked with different populations, as we say in clinical terms. I would like to ask you, would you please give us an overview, like a picture you had for the first time you went to Rwanda. I don't know how many years it was after the genocide, and you met genocide survivors in different walks of life. I would like to hear from you as a clinical psychologist. What was your impression? What was your take away at the first time you met them? What was the impression? What was the signs, the symptoms they show you? I mean, what did you see as a clinical psychologist?
Wow, that's a big question. First, I want to just thank you for inviting me, and also to say how honored I am to be on the panel with the pastor. So I would just like to recognize everything he's done and say how honored I am to be here. So the first time I went to Rwanda was 12 years after the genocide against the Tutsi. And at that time, I went with a small group of people and met primarily with young people who were orphan heads of household. So in the organization AOCM. And these young people who had been under the age of around 20 at the time of the genocide had become heads of household, caring for their cousins, their brothers, their sisters, other village members who needed care. And so we're immediately thrown from a happy life of childhood in most cases into a life of responsibility for many other people without the resources to do that. I also had the opportunity to meet with some of the women in Avega, so some of the women who had been widowed. What I was struck by overwhelmingly was the resilience and strength of the people I was meeting with. I mean, here were young people who were being faced with unimaginable challenges and who were stepping up to the responsibility to take care of other people. Were there challenges, difficulties? Absolutely. And what I'd heard from people was the reason that I became involved and kept going back to Rwanda was what the young people told me was they had two goals. Their first goal, the first most important thing, was education. And that gaining an education was for themselves and for their children, the children they were caring for, was their primary responsibility. The second thing was overcoming trauma. So I began working with that organization to find out what kinds of traumatic experiences people were having, to ask a number of questions. We ended up talking to 100 people we had and speaking with them about what sorts of things they were going through and what sorts of needs they have.
Thank you. That's pretty much a really good, I mean, clinically, it's a good picture, you would say, because it gave you a little bit what to go on as you were going to work with them from that moment on. I'm coming back to you, Pastor Antoine, picking up where we left off, because when people see you on this panel of mental health, people may wonder why a pastor is on a mental health panel. Why is he a panelist? Because a pastor, his job is to preach, is to read the Bible and to preach, the parishioners. But you were saying about unanswered questions that most of genocide survivors have because nobody has ever been able to answer that question. That's why I was going to ask you, as you're diving into that, help us also understand how a pastor, you are connected, to mental health. How do you come into the realm, like that field that is not really in the church, but it's in the pretty much like counseling and mental health, healthcare, and that field that is completely separate from what people would think a pastor do?
Actually, I think that's where people make a huge blunder, because in the context of Rwanda, the best counselors you can find around that people trust are pastors, because every day, as a matter of fact, in the Rwandan culture, in the Rwandan mindset, going to a psychosocial counselor is like confessing that you are going mad. And actually, we've had that problem because many people, although the government put in place many social centers, psychosocial centers, not many people attend them. Why? Because they are not used to. People are more used to going to people they know. And then they are used to going to pastors because everything here tends to be related to something spiritual. So when you have a problem, you see the pastor, you see somebody who can pray. But for me, that's not the major source. Because for me, I do it from an experiential perspective. For one, I studied psychology as one of the minor courses I took. But at the same time, I healed from my wounds through a spiritual experience. And from there, I could easily diagnose what others are suffering from my own experience. Because if you understand my journey, then you will understand where I come from. Because as a child, one of the areas that I found many survivors have to grapple with is unanswered questions. So you just wonder, why did they do that to us? And I struggled with that. And then later on, when I started processing my emotions, I knew how to handle the problem. So when, after the genocide of 1994, when I saw many people struggling with the same issues I had struggled with, I said, actually, I know how to handle that from an experiential perspective, not from a theoretical perspective, but from having gone through it myself and having learned to heal myself, I could easily advise others how to do it for themselves. So slowly, I could say I became an expert in the area because many people had trust in me because they knew I had shared the same experience. So coming to me, it was as if you are going to somebody who knows, somebody who has seen it as a child, somebody who has seen it as a teenager, somebody who has seen it as a young adult, and then as an adult. So all levels of life, I could handle them because I had suffered. Because you see, between 1959 and 63, I was a small child, 5 years old. Then 1973, I was a teenager. Then 1983, when we went through the injustices, I was a young adult. And then the genocide happened when I was 35. So when I spoke, many people tended to identify with my life and say, actually, he seems to know what we are suffering. I knew the sleepless nights. I could speak easily about them. I knew about the sadness and those questions that you ask yourself. And very often when I was preaching, I would mention those. I was preaching on the radio, I was on television. I was telling people, actually, you can heal from this. And many people started gaining hope and saying, actually, maybe he understands. So they started coming to me and they were simply learning from my experience. We were sharing our lives. Actually, in Rwanda, most of the people who healed, they healed through sharing their lives, opening up and talking to somebody who knows. You just say, actually, I suffered from this. And you say, actually, I did suffer from that, but this is how I healed. So slowly, that's how I became like what Henry Nguyen called the wounded healer. So I could heal others because I had been wounded and I had healed. So through the different problems, because you see, one, let me show you 4 problems that I saw with the survivors. Number 1 was those unanswered questions that led to sadness. Why did my father get killed? Where did he get killed? So some people who didn't find the bodies of their people could say, actually, he understands our problems. Because I had suffered those periods of questioning without answers. And the kind of confusion, the lack of focus, the lack of concentration. Sometimes you sit in class, and I often gave those examples, and I say, I know. Sometimes you are sitting in class, and you can't concentrate because you are thinking about your dad or your mom who disappeared. And people said, yes, that's what we feel. And then they would come to me. Then second, the loss of purpose. Because you see, in 1973, when they kicked us out of school, I was a very bright student. But I was always wondering, why should I study? After all, they are going to do it again. So I lost that sense of purpose. And very often when I spoke about it, people would say, yes, we have the same problem. So slowly, the anger, the hatred, the lack of focus, everybody was identifying with my problem because I was identifying with their problem. And when I was giving them solutions, they started coming to me because they said, maybe he has an answer. And everybody was looking for an answer because they would say, at least he's speaking hope in our hopeless situation. And that's how later on, slowly I was integrated into the Reconciliation Commission. I spoke into the prisons. Actually, both sides, by the way, both sides, I found trauma because even inside the prisons, I found people who could say, can somebody forgive us? And I had learned to forgive. And when I spoke in the prisons, I could see many people responding. So that's how slowly I integrated the biblical message into the healing process of the different groups, the survivors and the perpetrators. Actually, in Rwanda, for me, I can integrate any group because perpetrators find somebody who understands their problems, because I preached in all the prisons that were in Rwanda in 1994, 95, 96, up to the Gacaca courts. And then I was on the political side of it because I was a commissioner on the Unity and Reconciliation Commission. For 3 terms, I was the vice chair, which gave me an opportunity to speak a lot. So slowly, I learned to use the language. I learned to speak to the hearts of the people, and I learned to listen, and I learned to help the people heal. Anyway, let me stop there because I think I've given out most of the things I had to say. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Pastor. So, Beth, when you listen to Pastor Antoine, he's talking about cultural competency, he's talking about personal and environment. That is the approach he used to be able to talk to people who came to him. However, we cannot disregard or not acknowledge that in Rwanda, especially because of our culture, Rwandan culture, there is a stigma that is attached to mental health. Yeah. And with that, I think you've noticed it when you came to Rwanda, all those times you came, and I know you've also worked with the genocide survivors who are working in genocide memorial centers and all the programs that are tied to the genocide archive and museum and memorials, who are doing a daily job of collecting testimonies of genocide survivors, of genocide perpetrators, of bystanders. I would like to ask you, how would you describe the ways those survivors deal with unresolved trauma and how they'll be able to come out of that state and be able to open up so that they can start the healing process, healing journey that Pastor Antoine was talking about?
So are you referring specifically to people who do work in the field?
If we can start from them, because those are the genocide survivors also who are working on a daily basis on the genocide materials. So how, at least even if we can focus on those people, how would you describe their unresolved trauma and how they are dealing with it or not, but the ways they can also be able to deal with it?
Yeah, so one of the things that we know about traumatic stress is that it can be contagious. So when people are around other people who've experienced significant traumatic stress, you can pick it up, you can take it in. This is why perhaps some people see some of their children having some of the responses, even though their children might not have been alive during the genocide. There can be a contagion, and that can happen to people who work in the field. So we see it, for example, in my work, we see it with psychotherapists who are hearing very difficult stories from people. You can come to take in some of those experiences of traumatic stress, even having not been through it. So people who have the courage to work in this field, who actually are taking testimony from people, working in the museum, doing other work, commemorative work, not only have their own experience, but have the experience of the contagion, taking in, hearing, feeling, experiencing what has gone on with other people. So the workshops that I've done with Edith, and I don't know, Edith, maybe you want to say a word or two about them, with the Shoah Foundation, have focused on how people can understand that vicarious trauma, that trauma, that contagious effect, and how best to approach the work in a way that they can protect themselves from feeling that in too strong a way. So we've done a number of workshops that involve talking about the science of survival and how one goes into survival mode and how very productive and important that is. We heard from Emmanuel today that being in that, having that survival instinct is what keeps someone alive. And then how is it possible to shift from that being in that survival mode to being in a mode where the world feels safe, and how to find that. We also heard today from Landry and others about the absolute importance and responsibility for remembrance, commemoration. Well, when one's in survival mode, as we heard, the instinct is to avoid, to protect yourself, protect yourself, protect yourself. So it takes a lot of courage and strength to then remember. So finding that balance between self-protection and remembrance, I think, is one of the things that continues to be something that needs to be navigated for people.
Appreciate for that point. I'm going back to you, Pastor Antoine. You are doing already a great job, helping people kind of like acknowledging their feelings, tie them to the events they went through and how to move forward. But we have also noticed that children of genocide survivors, they're also showing symptoms and signs of trauma, which is intergenerational trauma. While I'm gonna also ask Beth to give us, the clear or concise, signs that people can look, up, can just kind of like try to observe and see if their children are presenting those signs. I would like to ask you, in our tradition, in our culture, how are parents dealing with that? If you can talk about it, have you noticed those signs, how parents are being able to deal with it? Because like you said, those children were not alive during the genocide. How are parents?
Well, actually, you see, actually, I think that's one of the big problems we are having now, because mainly with the commemoration. Actually, this afternoon, we are having a commemoration with the youth in our church. And some of the questions they were asking were exactly those questions you are asking. Because they were saying, we've never witnessed the genocide, but we are feeling the emotions. We are feeling the anger. We are feeling the questions. How do we deal with them? Because you see, for somebody like us who were there, at least we know what we've seen. But for these young people who have heard it, but never experienced it, they kind of inherit some of the emotions through the sadness they see in us, through the stories we tell, through what they hear on the radio, through what they hear from their friends, and they get confused. Actually, they inherit the kind of questions some of us had when we were younger. So which means that sometimes you have to watch the younger generation, because definitively, I noticed they are having the same problems I had when I was young. They are asking the questions. Who was those people? Who were those people who killed our people? Why did they do it? How did they do it? Why didn't somebody stop them? So they are now going back to that cycle of asking questions. So they are wondering, why did it happen? So they need somebody who can explain it without adding the poison of emotion. And the loss of purpose. Some of them are saying, what if? What if it happens again? What if they do it to us again? What if? So you find they are asking the same questions we were asking, because they don't know. They are living in between two generations. They are living with us who have the wounds, and they are looking into the future, but they are inheriting something from us. That kind of vicarious wounding is just the wounds are being transmitted to the younger generation. actually, which is for me a big worry, because many parents, they come to me and say, our children are getting this, but I don't know how to handle it because we are not educated to handle it. And not many people, even the teachers, they are not equipped to handle it. Then number two, because the genocide against the Tutsis has been politicized, many people don't want to talk about it. They say, what if I start talking about it and I don't speak about it correctly, and then I end up in trouble? So you find we are having this kind of trouble because people are scared to talk about it, why we should be talking about it, which is a huge problem.
Unfortunately, it's a problem that needs to be dealt with if we need to keep our children healthy. Beth, I would like to ask, what are the signs and symptoms that people need to watch for when it comes to secondary trauma, among the children who are just experiencing intergenerational trauma? Because even on this panel, you have parents today who were children during the genocide between 10 and 15, 16, even 20. Some of them here are parents, and they don't know when that will happen. And if it does happen, I think we all would like to be able to say, if my child is having this kind of behavior, maybe it's something I need to look into. If my child, let's say, if my child jumps out of, anything that, scares him or her out of nowhere, and this is a child that has not been abused, that this is a child that has never experienced any traumatic event, but out of nowhere, this child starts to jump out whenever there is a sudden noise. And when you ask the child, they're like, I don't know, I got scared. Why did you do this? So I think if that's happened to people, some may not even take a moment to think about it. But would you equip us with knowledge that we can use if something happens and we need to be able to look into it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question, of course, and not one I can fully answer quickly. But I think the thing to really be aware of and to make sense of is going back to that idea of being in survival mode. So if a child is feeling that the world is not entirely a safe place, that other people aren't necessarily to be trusted, that that something bad is around the corner, that sense of always bracing yourself for something bad that might happen, I think that underlies a lot of what we see. So it might be nightmares, which is very common to have nightmares. It might be nightmares about something that never even happened. One survivor told me that his son was having nightmares about the genocide and about his daddy being hurt in the genocide, even though the son was not alive during the genocide. The sense of not feeling like the world is necessarily a safe place, feeling like perhaps that your parents are so protective of you that you worry that maybe they see some danger that you don't know about. That sense of being overprotected. So there's a whole range of experiences, but it all comes back to feeling like the world's not really a safe place. Mm-hmm. And I think that this year has been enormously challenging for all of us because the world has not been a safe place. And so for people who've had other experiences that have confirmed that there's danger, and then to live through this pandemic and to tell our children, don't go outside, put on a mask, and having already had the experience of growing up in a family where that trauma might have been inherited, passed on, that this year I think has been an especially challenging year for people.
Thank you for that. Just as we are wrapping up this, I'm going to have one last question for each of you. Pastor, I know personally I've always looked up for your word of wisdom. What can you tell everyone listening today? What can you give us as something to hang on for the next, I don't know how long, from your point of view? Give us something just we can hang on moving forward.
Well, that's a tough question to answer, but I always tell people, when we remember, a time like this when we remember, I always tell people when we remember those who are gone, but we should remember ourselves. Look deep inside yourself. See the kind of emotions you've been harboring all this time. And unless you process them, as a matter of fact, they will come to haunt your mind very often. I lived with that and I know what I'm talking about, because time doesn't erase those emotions. Actually, they sink deeper. And as they sink deeper, they corrupt your perception of people, they corrupt your perception of life, they corrupt everything about you. And it takes time to reprocess them and take them out. And that's something everybody should be doing, because we are leaders. And leaders with corrupted minds actually lead like those people who led us to the genocide. As a matter of fact, I don't want to go back and speak much about woundedness and leadership, but I've found that wounded leaders become very oppressive because they lead with their fears, and they lead with their anger, and they lead with their obsessions. And that's something we need to take into consideration. And when we remember so that we heal and we become better people. And for me, every time when you go remembering, when I listen to the songs, like the ones we listen to, I let them resonate in my heart to see if they are not bringing out something I have forgotten. I told you I wrote a book. Let me finish on this one. I entitled Reconciliation is My Lifestyle. When I was writing chapter 2, that I entitled Stolen Childhood, I found one area of my life I had never processed properly. Then tears started just welling up in my eyes. And I was sitting at the airport in Amsterdam, and somebody sitting next to me said, "What's going wrong? I see you are kind of weeping." I said, no, I think I have an allergy or something. But the thing was, I had touched something I had never opened up. So I think as we remember, let those songs and let all these lessons sink deep inside you, and look inside to see if you are not harboring some corners that you haven't explored and processed, and then you start just bringing them to the surface and heal from them. Because that's one of the things I've learned from remembering. We don't just remember people who are gone. We don't just remember the cruelties. We remember so as to improve our own lives. We remember so as to improve our mindset. We remember so that we can forgive and be better people. So that's my lesson. That's what I can give you up.
Thank you very much. Always wisdom that comes our way. We appreciate that. Please, Beth, give us an advice from a clinical and professional perspective. What can we do as genocide survivors, or even people who live with genocide survivors?
Well, I'm reluctant to give advice, but I'll give a couple of thoughts. So I think that in the work that I've done, I think that there are 4 things that are present for people who are moving on in the way that the pastor described, and I think very eloquently. I wouldn't disagree with anything. To move beyond the survival mode requires real courage. And I think it's a kind of courage we've seen here today, and we see often in people being willing to approach things that are painful to approach. Think about things that are hard to think about. Move beyond difficulties. So number 1, courage. Number 2, developing a sense of agency in the world. Genocide is designed to make a person feel like you have no control and no power. You don't have power over what happens to you, what happens to your family, over life and death. You have no control. And recapturing that sense of agency, finding ways to be present in the world with a sense of that you can control things, that you have the ability to make the world a place that you want to be in, I think is the second thing. Thirdly, finding ways to be calm. Like learning ways, learning techniques to allow yourself to be calm at those moments when agitation becomes overwhelming. And that takes practice, it's a skill. So it's a matter of learning that skill and practicing it, whether it's meditation, prayer, breathing exercises, whatever it is. You could do all of those things and be leading a very successful life. But without this fourth thing, it's not probably the life most of us want to lead. And that fourth thing is finding joy. And finding joy, moving beyond the numbness that can come with being in a survival mode, moving beyond the anger, finding those moments of happiness and joy in life, just those moments, and not letting those slip by, grabbing those. So those are the four things that I have seen in people who really seem to live full and meaningful lives.
I cannot thank you both enough for your wisdom and your knowledge, everything you shared with us. And I believe everybody here has learned the one or two things, and they are going to carry them with them, you know, as long as they can. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks for being with us. Landry.
Thank you so much. I thank you, Yvonne, for being able to coordinate this panel. It was very wonderful. And I believe personally, we were able to learn a lot of things from these discussions. I liked how Beth talked about when she went back in Rwanda, one orphan said his primary goal was education. I think that hits home for more people. When genocide ended, there were a lot of orphans. Our only hope was education. And thank God we had government that stepped up and be able to provide that education. And I'm a living witness of that. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of like me out there. They also spoke about how you switch from survival mode to the safety mode. I think it's a skills, like most people say, in the transition. It might take time, but we're gonna slowly get there. We still have hope as long as you have a country. Also, Dr. Antoine Rutayisire touched about early childhood trauma. That's huge, and we have faced it, and we're still facing it. And as we're growing up to be parents, we're going to be seeing a lot of it. But like we said, we're going to be talking. It's very good to be open, seek for help before we transmit that to our children and future generations. So to save time, I think this is the time we've been waiting for. I'm going to welcome our guest speaker. The next one is Ambassador of the Republic of Rwanda here in the United States of America. Please, Honorable Ambassador Mathilde Mukantabana, if you are ready, it's your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andre. Ngiriwe, good afternoon. Jason and the members of the IBUKA-US, all the eminent presenters, dear survivors, distinguished guests, and I can say maybe all protocol observed. I would like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to all of you who have come to show solidarity with Rwandans on this important day of remembrance. Your support, solidarity, and friendship with the people of Rwanda is a comforting reminder that we are no longer standing alone. All of you, especially the eminent presenters, went into detail about various aspects of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And you also had a glimpse of what the survivors endured during those dark, horrible 100 days. Through the moving testimonies presented both last night during the last vigil, but also today by Emmanuel and many presentations by survivors. Thank you all so much for your deeply moving and highly edifying presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, in Rwanda, we have come to accept the burdens and obligations of memory. We are inextricably bound to our past, however painful, but we also are committed not to repeat it. Indeed, it's by remembering that we honor the lives lost, express solidarity with those who survived, and find powerful inspiration to build a society too strong, too full of hope to permit the emergence of the hatred and violence that all but destroyed us in about 27 years ago. Our solemn task is to speak plainly about what happened in 1994 and to counter the efforts to obscure and distort our history. We owe this to the victims and survivors, of course, but also it's no less of an obligation to generations of Rwandans yet to be born. If we fail to reckon with the truth of what occurred in 1994, if we allow a false narrative to take hold in its place, we fatally undermine the mission encapsulated in just the 2 words by Holocaust Elie Wiesel and embraced wholeheartedly by the Rwandan people and our many friends across the globe. Never again. Dear friends, the eminent genocide scholar and president of Genocide Watch, Gregory Stanton, that you all know very well, has greatly contributed to our understanding of genocide in his identification of the various stages that I'm not going to go over because most of you have covered some aspects of them. But we are today, we can say with certainty that we are tackling with the last stage that was also present, that is the denial of genocide. If we are unable to heed those signs and prevent the irreparable, we can still help to heal the wounds of history by fighting the last stage that is unfortunately occurring on our watch, genocide denial. Today, even in the face of overwhelming evidence and documented history, there are still those who continue to preach hatred and division, propagating a false narrative about the genocide and negating the reality of our history. At a time when Rwandans are busy rebuilding the nation. Some of those who orchestrated and perpetrated the genocide, along with their sympathizers, continue to deny and distort the truth of what happened. And sadly, as I think Honorable Mugesera said, many of them are here among ourselves. A handful of fringe academics and journalists in the West have proven susceptible to negationist narrative. Not coincidentally, these theories are relentlessly promoted by a network of well-connected Rwandans in exile. And I think that Jason went over some of the names that we all know very well, who are desperate to conceal their own complicity and who harbor ambitions of returning Rwanda to the mire of pre-1994 ethnic politics. We must push strongly to make genocide ideology a punishable crime, as it is in some few countries, including Rwanda. Don't be fooled, especially here, by those who are pandering their denialism under the mantle of free speech. There's no contradiction between free speech and the fight against genocide ideology. There's a line between merely offensive speeches and inflammatory and hateful pronouncement that quite recently led to the murder of over 1 million people. Ladies and gentlemen, genocide devastated our nation because all our institutions implicitly or explicitly embraced and promoted that ideology, from the government to church to media, all the way to the family unit. Don't be silent when institutions in your midst promote similar ideologies. We, as Rwanda in 2021, have no desire to turn back the clock. And we'll fight denial and revisionism at every turn. The stakes are too high not to. Let's reject the old politics of ethnic division and hatred, and today let's embrace our shared national identity as Rwandans. And it's working. Reconciliation is always a work in progress, we all know that. And it's undeniably difficult, because you can just imagine how it's been for survivors who are often asked to live side by side with people who might have perpetrated crimes against them or their families. But without reconciliation, there is no peace and security. Without reconciliation, there's no economic development. Without reconciliation, there is no improvement in the health status or quality of life for all of us and all the ordinary Rwandans. Let's remember in his remarks during the commemoration of what our president said, President Kagame said, and underline the dynamics between the past and the present and the future. We cannot turn the clock back, nor can we undo the harm caused, but we have the power to determine the future and to ensure that what happened never happens again. His message has strongly resonated and still guides us in our aspiration to renew ourselves in a united nation. Together we renew, we choose a collective future through the construction of another better and possible history. As the theme indicates, remember, unite, and renew define the Rwanda of today, a country of hope. Rwanda is a country undeniably shaped by unspeakable tragedy, but not beholden to it. The ethos of never again permeates our society at every level, and it must. Dear friends, and our country and its leadership are doing their part to ensure a better future for all of the citizens. All of us here, let's do our own part. In our schools, in our families, in our place of work and worship, and in our communities. It behoves all of us to stand together for our humanity. Let's not allow those who are trying to scramble our history to go unchallenged. And especially to our young people here in the US and elsewhere, whose family did the unspeakable. Unshackle yourselves and join other young people of your generation who are actively helping in building a better nation. Let me thank again IBUKA-US for convening us today. I don't have any doubt that you will be a formidable force in amplifying the voices of the genocide survivors. I thank all of you for attending today, for your solidarity and care, and we commemorate for the 27th time the genocide against the Tutsi. Mureke twibuke twiyubaka. Murakoze.
Rakoze. Also, we want to thank you for taking time. We know this event was a little bit lasting, but you were able to hang in there until right now. So we're going to listen one more song, and then after we're going to listen one wrap-up message, and it will be the end of our event. If our IT is ready, right now it's time for one last song.
yahageze ananiwe atabasha no kuvuga kuko we yahageze bamaze kumutema yahageze ari kumwe n'utwana twe tune iyo wababonaga bahari nkurikirane yageze kuri bariyeri abo yahasanze bamukubaho uruziga we yageze kuri bariyeri abo yahasanze bamukubaho uruziga yarafite imbaraga nke maze ariyicarira akana ke ko mu mugongo kari kakomeje kurira kamusabaga ibyo kurya maze akabura icyamuha. Bamusabye k'uwo mwana yarahetse yamururutsa, uwo mubyeyi abasaba imbabazi, ati umwana wanjye ararwaye, aratakamba basaba imbabazi, ati umwana wanjye ararwaye. Bamujishuye uwahetse uwo mubyeyi amanika ukuboko, ati mbere yuko munyica reka ngira icyo mbasaba. Ati ndabizi ko munyica, ndabibona ko nta makiriro. Ati ndabizi ko munyica, ndabibona ko nta makiriro. Kunyica ni munyice, ariko mundekera abana. Niba namwe muri ababyeyi, nimundekera abana. Niba namwe mwarabyaye, ndabinginze nimundekera abana. Iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze, iteka rimpora ku mutima. Iryo jambo uwo mubyeyi yavuze, ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi. Ati kunyica nimunyice, ariko mundekera abana. Ati kunyica nimunyice, ariko mundekera abana. Uko bakubitaga uwo mubyeyi, abana be nabo barabibonaga. Akana ke kabucura karamuhamagaye, akana ke kari igitambambuga karamuhamagaye. Katari kose mama, nk'ubu turazira iki? Nibongera kugukubita, ndabarega kuri papa. Nibongera kugukubita, ndabarega kuri papa. Iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze, iteka rimpora ku mutima. Iryo jambo uwo mubyeyi yavuze, ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi. Ati kunyica nimunyice, ariko mundekera abana. Ati kunyica nimunyice, ariko mundekera abana. Nawe se nkundira nkubaze, nkundira nkubaze wowe wacitse kw'icumu abawe mujya gutandukana mbese ubwo ujya wibuka irya nyuma mwavuganye cya gihe babirukankana musezeranaho mbese mwavuganye ng'iki umwana wawe mujya gutandukana cya gihe hajya kugenda mwavuganye ng'iki umufasha wawe mujya gutandukana agusezeraho we mwavuganye ng'iki ababyeyi bawe mujya gutandukana ababyeyi bawe mwavuganye ng'iki iryo jambo rya nyuma bakubwiye ryurizirikana kiriya ni igihango iryo jambo wawe yakubwiye cya gihe ajya kugenda ryurizirikana igihe rigufasha kumwibuka kiriya ni igihango igihe rigufasha kumwibuka kiriya ni igihango.
Well, thanks again for that song. As we get to the end of our event today, I also want to thank you one more time. I want to take this time to thank the organizing team, those who worked so hard behind the scene to make this event possible. I also want to acknowledge those who are following us from different countries. We acknowledge the time differences, yet you were able to stay with us until the end of the event. Before I let you go, I want you to remind a few things. This, like most people say, it's going to be an ongoing journey. As survivors, as Rwandans, as a country, we carry a heavy responsibilities. We could need to be fighting against those who deny our history. It's very disturbing to be able to face this, to listen to those who perpetuated genocide, be the one to tell their story. Yet we have the true story and we need to say it. So as we go, as we move on, because this journey will last 3 months, as we keep commemorating for our genocide survivors and those who died in genocide, we keep doing this for 100 days. But we should make it our daily mission. We should always wake up and fight those who are trying to twist the history. We cannot only do it within time, within just 3 months. We need to take responsibility and be aware of what is going on. I thank you all. Thank you for staying tuned. Thank you for being patient. And I wish you a good night and stay safe. God bless you.